The HCT Winter Championship, and we're going to be moving very swiftly on to the Group C, and our first match is going to be Saimiao versus Definition. As you've just seen, are you excited for this one, Sol? Because it's just yet another two very different lineups.
Yeah, it really is, and I think it's a very potentially lopsided pair of lineups as well. I think Saimiao with Q-Block, Clone Priest, Quest Rogue, Death Rattle Hunter has a huge advantage going into this series, potentially against Definition, who has kind of a similar strategy, but much slower. It's kind of what we're calling control versus anti-control, which you don't need too much explanation as to which of those two lineups is favored.
Wait, don't I? I'm joking, of course, but Saimiao looking pretty good already. Just you can see the Q-Block actually been banned out for him, and then the Wall Priest from Definition has been banned out. And it's a little bit of a shame because I would have liked to have just seen it played on the stage. Maybe we'll see it because it's not going to be the final game for Definition today, no doubt. But definitely an interesting deck choice. He did say he was expecting more Odd Paladin in the tournament, and I believe there is only Ike who is bringing it out of everyone, so that Wall Priest might come back to bite him a little bit. Yeah,
it's interesting because I think Kibler really hit the nail on the head a couple of minutes ago, where he said a lot of people have brought very greedy lineups because they didn't expect to see much aggro. That seemed to be the most common read, whereas Definition clearly did expect to see some aggro coming in and has brought an anti-aggro lineup, but he's unfortunately got the short end of the stick because he's the one running into anti-control instead.
Yeah, and already you can argue how good Wall Priest is, but it's good enough to draw a ban, which in a lot of lineups is actually just a win in itself, right? If you were bringing what you believe to be four very powerful decks, but one has kind of lopsided matchups, that being banned out, it's like, well, okay, it's kind of a victory in itself because you get to play your three other powerful decks. So it's going to see how it's going to go here. I am excited to see Saimiao play. Obviously, he's becoming a bit of a regular now for us, and one of the Chinese players we actually, starting to just know more and more about. And I think most importantly, China getting the job done today so far.
Yeah, I mean, it's up to Saimiao to see if he can carry that on, because personally for me, he was a player that was very impressive, and I think that sentiment was echoed in the previous championships by the other casters and by various other members of the Western pro scene. But according to various members of the Chinese Twitter community who have kind of come over to communicate with us using our platform, essentially, which we thank them for, Saimiao actually faced a lot of criticism from the rest of the Chinese scene for how he played in the championships. But we asked him about that, and he said that that really doesn't affect him. As long as he's happy with how he's playing and he gets the results that he wants, then that's all that matters.
Yeah, well, let's go straight into it. Game at number one, Saimiao versus Definition. Saimiao is going to be on his Clone Priest, and then Definition, as you can quite rightly see, is that Hakar Druid going. You can see Hakar in the opening hand along with Tog as well. So, this Druid is definitely becoming a sort of cult favorite, I would say, among a lot of pro players and some casual players alike, actually, with just the sheer amount of damage that can be done at the very end of the game with that Hakar combo, Sol.
Yep. It's one of the most, ultimate unpreventable win conditions in the game. It's why potentially this is the deck that can really do some work for Definition. I think it was between this and the Wall Priest in terms of, well, I think Evenlock, Wall Priest, and Hakar Druid were all a potential ban for Saimiao, but they're only all potential bans because he's so overwhelmingly favored in the series overall that he was kind of banning away a mediocre deck that he had some good matchups against no matter which way he did it. He ended up banning out the Wall Priest in the end.
That's what we were talking about beforehand, right? We literally couldn't decide on what we thought was going to be banned out.
Right. He ended up banning out the Wall Priest, which, does have a potentially favorable matchup against his Q-Block, as well as a potentially favorable matchup against his Death Rattle Hunter as well. So you can see just how potentially favored he is in the series when you can just ban out a deck that just has a couple of small favorables. There's nothing that really sweeps his lineup.
Yeah. Saimiao on this Clone Priest, we've seen it, once, twice already today, and this is a deck I believe a lot of players did expect to see a lot of in this tournament.
Oh, yes.
But where do you land on, I'll call them tech cards, but I don't really mean it, in like the gargoyles, for example? People are now cutting gargoyles, and not too long ago it seemed a staple of the deck. What's happened there?
I mean, what's happened is that the deck has evolved in a number of different ways, and people have kind of disagreed on how they want to evolve it as a baseline and also what the right approach for a metagame is, because you can build the deck in a way where you burst most consistently, where you throw out the Mind Blast Holy Smite combo for 34+ on a more regular basis by cutting minions, by streamlining the deck, so on and so forth, more res effects, all that kind of stuff. Or you can just build a more anti-aggro list where you potentially have Gilded Gargoyles, something to play early. You have Witchwood Grizzlies, which can create just a Wall Priest style deck where you just res a big taunt over and over again. And it really just does depend, you know, what your read on the metagame is and how you want to approach this kind of thing. You know, looking at Saimiao, he does not have the Witchwood Grizzlies in here. He does have Gilded Gargoyles, which to me speaks to his anti-control strategy with this lineup. He doesn't need Witchwood Grizzlies because he's trying to beat control decks. He would like Gilded Gargoyles for extra coins because each of those coins can potentially turn into 20 damage with an additional spell that comes down.
Okay, well, see it get cleared up there, and Saimiao just gets the coin and locks that Gilded Gargoyle into the Resurrect Bank. The Mind Blast, I believe, was picked up from the Shadow Vision, so, you know, there's +1 Mind Blasts available for the whole length of the deck here. And Lyra can obviously get some crazy things coming out of that one just to be able to create even further chances at lethal going forward. But Definition, I'm very interested to see just how he plays this matchup, because on one hand, you have the Hakar combo, which pretty much just kills anyone, no matter what, when you play it, if you get the combo off. But also, you know, King Tog's in there, and then Druid can gain a lot of armor against a deck that wants to burst for X. So there's just a few questions about how this deck is even supposed to be played out in this matchup.
It is most likely going to come down to kind of a race to the win condition, though. It is a fairly even matchup, I believe, between the two decks. It's not a enormously common matchup, but both these decks are fairly well represented, and I don't think either really has a huge edge. But Definition actually is spiking really, really early on to a Auctioneer turn. And I'm trying to get through this particular board state without mentioning anything about priests and 4-attack minions, but I don't think it can be done, because that's exactly the reason why we're seeing this play come out from Definition, is because of that notorious priest meme. Just a 4-attack minion, very, very difficult for a priest to deal with, and this just allows him an entire turn of Auctioneer on the following turn.
Yeah, funnily enough, one of the few things that could have dealt with it was coin Shadow Essence pulling Ziliax, so he could actually have killed it. But Ziliax was drawn, so that is now no longer on the cards. But yeah, I think that was the only card in the deck, or only series of outcomes that would have killed the Gadgetzan just right now.
Yeah,
But Definition, so knowing it's extremely unlikely, and yeah, it's going to die over 2 turns, but
depends how ridiculous you want to get. And double Holy Smite, I guess.
I mean, that's a win in itself, isn't it? Let's be honest. Now, one thing I do believe as well about statistics of decks and matchups is that a matchup like this, I'm not sure how reliable statistics are, because I think a lot of people have played this matchup not very well, because it is a tricky one.
No idea what they were doing.
Well, yeah, to be completely, I wouldn't. Not necessarily to a high level, at least, because it's a weird matchup, and also the pathways of even every single turn can go so wide in differences when you account for Lyra, what gets summoned from Spellstones, how quickly the Druid can draw. King Togwoggle in the deck, for example. It's so many different things you have to keep track of for both players in this matchup. Is very, very difficult to maneuver.
In this Auctioneer, you can see the immediate payoff. Saimiao just tried to basically take care of the Auctioneer over 2 turns, although it seemed unlikely, by shipping his Ziliax into it. But Definition with the perfect answers, the initial buff with the Earthen Scales, and then being able to clear out the Ziliax with the Spellstone as well. It's a huge amount of cycle now for Definition. It looks like he might just get another turn of it as well.
Yeah, and the question now for Saimiao is, how desperate is he to kill this Gadgetzan? Does he have to consider Lyra, Coin, maybe Radiant, depending on what's left? You know, do you think, like, I cannot give a deck that once it's drawn the deck beats me more card draw? But Saimiao did instead choose to summon a 5/5 from the deck. And it was Velen, so it's a powerful one, but it's already dead. That's the problem right now.
Yep.
And with no Resurrecting hand, it's not like he can guarantee, okay, well, you kill the Velen now, I summon it back for cheaper next turn, and then do something.
I think he's still very happy. Like, if this 5/5 trades with that Auctioneer, because of how dire a position he's in currently, I think he considers that a win in this spot. You know, Clone Priest minions are still incredibly expendable. Even if you can't res them immediately, they are still, like, it's almost a goal that you have to play your minion and have it die, because it's what creates all your wacky combos. So if he can play a 5/5 on the board and it trades with a 5/2 Auctioneer from Definition, it's just the best solution to a problem that Saimiao has right now.
Yep. After seeing Pounce number 2, Samyao knows if Definition chooses, he can just press Hero Power, kill it off, and this Gadgetzan is still alive. And look at the health total as well. Definition's just ticking all the boxes that allow him to win this game at this point.
Yeah. And this is where, when you start to cut some minions from your deck, which Samyao has, there's no Grizzlies, as we said, there's no Lich King. This is where your build of the deck can start to fall apart, when you cannot realistically set up a burst plan on your opponent. Normally in a situation like this against Druid, you'll go, okay, well, I just have to fall back on rezzing Lich King Mali Velen and then hit you with it. And if you manage to stop that somehow, I'll do it again with my next Spellstone. That's not really an opportunity that Samyao has available to him. He only has 2 really huge minions in the deck in terms of Malagos and Prophet Velen.
Yeah, probably a lot of relief there for Samyao as he did pick up the Shadow Word Death, which, along with the Earthen Scales on the Gadgetzan, allowed it to be killed. Gadgetzan number 2, let's go.
And now Biology Project as well, being thrown out from Definition. Yep.
This is when you know the deck is kind of silly. When you just Moonfire Face for 1 is just 100% the correct play.
0 mana, draw a card. I play those. You can even keep your 1 damage. I don't even want it. And this is, borderline formality at this point. Definition just going through the motions. He would have to do something catastrophically wrong from this position, because Samyao does not really have any chance to set himself up an immediate bursting win condition, so he's just going to need some magic here. It's just really not an availability.
Right, I mean, aside from getting up and walking away, I don't know what Definition can do to lose this game at this point. It's so far ahead, and like I said, it's not only is he edging towards the deck being emptied, so King Tog can get the job done, and Hakar can get the job done. He also just has so much health, so it's like he's just ticking 2 win condition boxes at the same time, which, if you can tick one of those, you generally win the game.
Yep.
I wonder.
Malagos is a little bit frustrating because you don't really often want to use it Naturalize against an enemy minion, but just may not matter at this point.
Yeah, I mean, Definition,
do it anyway.
Definition has very nearly hit the point where Naturalize is actually a very strong offensive tool for him. So, you know, it's not like that Malagos is going to do a huge amount of work if he leaves it around. Spirit Lash as being a full heal just doesn't really matter. Mind Blast is not threatening with the amount of health that Definition has. So there's no great rush for him to deal with it right now, but I think he can actually do so more efficiently, with the Spellstone instead. So it just goes ahead and takes it off the board. And look at how quickly Definition has got this done. Look to the right side of your screen. 2 cards remaining in the Druid deck, and in Samyao's Priest, 18 cards remaining.
It's absurd, isn't it, to be honest? It really, really is. I will say as well, just a small note for leaving the Malagos up, if that was ever a plan. The card Vivid Nightmares is in Samyao's list, and that is a card that I believe was added just for those, oh, you didn't kill my Velen this turn. Vivid Nightmares, you're dead.
Well, I mean,
and just create some huge burst potential. Not in this specifically, but more just a note that sometimes leaving a minion like that up, if you feel safe, isn't.
Yeah, even just in general, I think it's a card that makes sense if you're building your deck anti-control, right? Yes. Because it's so much damage. You know, it's a chance against Odd Warrior, it's a chance against Druid that have stacked an enormous amount of armor, and you don't just have to have your minion left alive. You know, you can combine it with Radiant Elemental Spellstone turns, with Xerix turns, with all of this kind of crazy stuff. It's so much damage being added.
What a note to go on as Samyao, as we've talked about for a few turns now, is in a rough spot, and he does have a Surrender to Madness in hand, so it just feels correct that he might well be surrendering in this game.
What to do?
Are there even any fear factors for Definition right now? Is there anything that can go wrong outside of him conceding the game himself? I don't know. I guess the trades off because of potential silence might make it weird, but I guess that's why King Togwaddle's there.
Yeah.
As well as another backup plan.
But I think killing the Lyra is intelligent there, you know, using that Moonfire just to make sure Lyra stays off the board. You know, we're in the realms of possibility where the things that Saimiao needs to win the game are as unlikely as him infinitely looping Holy Smites until Definition dies
Right.
off that Lyra with a Radiant Elemental on the board.
I wonder.
If you're just joining Hearthstone, by the way, and you're unfamiliar as to why the guy who has no cards left in his deck is overwhelmingly favored to win this game.
Welcome to the game.
That card on the board, Hakar, shuffles cards called Corrupted Bloods into your deck, which when drawn, deal damage and shuffle more copies of themselves back into the deck. So Definition's goal here is to make his entire deck Corrupted Bloods and then use the card King Togwaggle to give that deck of just purely Corrupted Bloods to his opponent.
And then it does a lot of damage, even on the with the help of neutralizes
Yes.
on that same turn. And now I was just going to mention Psychic Screams technically prolong the game, but that's about all they do.
Right.
So they aren't really going to change much because there's so few cards in the deck anyway. Psychic Scream just says, draw your Hakar next turn, and that's about it.
Right. And Saimiao here, yes, he can now resurrect a board, potentially with all of his massive spell damage buffs, but he cycled Mind Blasts, digging off of Lyra earlier in the game. So again, I mentioned it's more difficult for him with this style of deck that he has built to just build a board that is going to beat Definition in terms of pure minion pressure, but that's about all he has left at this point.
Right, one thing that's a little bit awkward about this combo of legendaries you can see in Definition's hand is one way you can play around Hakar is by having a 10-card hand.
Yep.
So then the blood gets drawn, but then just destroys itself and doesn't have its live effect.
Right.
The problem is, one way to not play around Tog is to have a 10-card hand, so then you can't switch deck backwards again.
Right.
So even in a prolonged state, if Saimiao holds on this game, because of mainly the lack of innovates, because Definition's used them both, makes his turns a little bit slower.
Yeah, that's the one thing that I'm really questioning about how Definition has played this game out, is that he was cycling so quickly with those Auctioneers, whether the innovates needed to be used in the way
He could
they
have
had.
innovated on 5 instead of 4, for example, for the Auctioneers.
Right, or like even just potentially after innovating the Auctioneer in the first place, not using the second innovate.
But didn't he double innovate on 4?
I think he innovate coined, I believe.
Oh, did he? Oh, okay,
Yeah.
sorry, apologies.
I might be wrong on that one. But yeah, I mean, because he's not able to kill his own Hakar here with the Innovate Naturalize, that is just slowing Definition down to the point where Saimiao can get something going. He's desperately, Saimiao here, trying to upgrade that Spellstone to the maximum. That's why we've seen him doing really, really kind of silly-looking plays.
Right.
It's not me criticizing the play, it's just a byproduct of what he needed to do. He's done really bizarre-looking spells, that turns that just threw away spells in order to try and fully upgrade this Diamond Spellstone.
And now the big question is, after the second Psychic Scream, with this Radiant Elemental on the board, Definition doesn't need Innovates to do it in the same turn, so
Right.
basically, Saimiao has to kill this Radiant Elemental.
Zilliax. No, not Zilliax. Okay.
Zilliax.
No.
Zilliax. Oh wait, no, that's not how Seance works. Oh, all right. That's actually a...
Sure?
Did he just...
Did he just know?
Yeah!
Is he a
did
genius?
Because, as I mentioned, the Radiant Elemental creates the turn that we said he couldn't do because of no Innovates.
Yeah.
And Saimiao could have 100% killed it off twice.
Right.
Didn't. And then just rolled silence anyway. It's actually really funny.
Yeah, it's interesting itself that he uses the silence on the Radiant Elemental, but of course probably correct in that spot. There's no point holding the silence for the Hakar while leaving a Radiant Elemental on the board,
Right.
because you allow your opponent to just immediately naturalize the Hakar.
And you definitely want the Gadget Zen to not die, because now you want the Gadget Zen alive. So, because right now, Definition cannot kill this Gadget Zen off on this board, and the more he plays spells, the more he's going to fatigue himself.
Right.
Just as much, though, he could actually just go Tog with the naturalizers this turn. And just say, nah, died to fatigue anyway, who cares? You keep bouncing this Hakar, I will beat you with my other dude.
Yeah, and it looks like that is what's going to happen.
And that's the kind of like I said, they're covering the bases of this Togwaggle and Hakar in the same deck because they both work in opposite fashions to a certain extent.
And I think this is actually a great spot from Definition because you see Saimiao with the double Lyra line that he took did actually find himself an out. You know, down there, 5th from the left, there is a copy of Mass Dispel that got picked up as well. So if the Hakar did end up just getting dropped on the board, Saimiao could potentially silence that off as well. Definition choose to took no risk with the random Lyra cards whatsoever, just switched to the Togwaggle route instead, and now you can see Saimiao is the player dying to fatigue now as the decks are swapped. And Definition, no matter how fast he drew this game, does not in fact have -1 cards in his deck.
And as if by magic, the numbers disappear. The problem now is, you know, I mentioned earlier, Vivid Nightmares, and now there's Velen, as well as the spell damage from the Malagos. That starts to add up to ridiculous fashions. But as you mentioned earlier, the Mind Blasts have been used, so there isn't quite the chance right now of absurd levels of damage coming out from the turn.
Right. The issue here, so it does get a little bit scary for Definition because, yeah, he's a functional 60 right now, right? So he can afford to tank this board a couple of times and it's no big deal. The problem is if he leaves the spell damage guys alive, then potentially if there's a Spirit Lash in Saimiao's hand, which for all he knows there might be, then that stops Saimiao dying to fatigue, and maybe there's enough time for this hand to, or this board to beat up Definition from this position.
Say that 3 times fast.
I don't want to, and you can't make me.
Damn. You got me. This Master Spell is actually huge, isn't it?
What to do?
Not in the fact that it draws a card, which is a bit of a problem, but the silencing of the Hakar is a big, big deal right now. Did we call this too early, Mr. Sottle?
It's possible.
Because I think we both kind of grazed over the double usage of Innovate.
Yes.
And
It really did make Definition's life very difficult, the way the Innovate.
It felt like the Innovates rushed the first half of the game, but then slowed down the second half, so it ended up being the same, if not slightly slower in general, because Definition drew his deck 10 minutes ago. Right. And he's still not won, which is very strange for this matchup.
I was about to suggest this play, though. I think, first of all, the first thing my brain leapt out to is that I just kind of wanted some priest cards in my hand, because my current hand of druid cards was really not doing anything. And then realized that using that Pyromancer Acolyte combination that would draw Definition the cards, he can actually then trade over the Malagos as well, which is a huge, huge win for... sorry, trade over the Velen as well, which is a huge win for him in terms of trying to win the game.
Here we go, though. Saimiao going for the 18th Lyra of the game. Wait.
Oh, boy. Does any of that help?
I'm just thinking, Mind Vision. Hakar.
Yeah.
Like, come on,
yeah,
please.
and, yeah. Saimiao, I think, knew that that is the only remaining minion in his deck. Potentially. I may have lost track. It's been a slightly confusing game. I hope you'll forgive me.
Nope.
No, fair enough.
So, Vivid. How much does he need to heal, actually? You can always play this first.
There's the Lash.
So you Vivid first, right?
What do you want to Vivid?
Oh, I guess... Oh, never mind. No. I thought you could Vivid, do other things, and then Lash, but you can't. You actually just... You don't have any other spells in hand unless something comes from the Vivid onto the Elemental.
Okay.
Bit too risky, though.
Oh, the Mind Blast off the top alongside the Prophet Velen.
That just looks like a GG to me.
Yep. I think Definition just went to play it and then just took a moment just to make sure there was nothing mechanically that prevented this doing what he thought it was going to do. No, Definition, as wacky as that game is, it doesn't matter what class you're playing, Velen plus Mind Blast still does 10, and then the fatigue comes through. Question marks for me about the way Definition navigated through the mid portion of that game, because we were very excited. We called the game over very early, and I think it was, but I think potentially Definition just got himself in a little bit of a mess in how he sequenced a few things later on.
Yeah, I think there was just a pause of like, oh, wait, he held off this one thing I didn't think he would. Oh, now what? I didn't think that far ahead, because maybe he was in our mindset of, oh, this is just a formality now. Right. This is just done and dusted. And then there was just the, oh, the screams kind of delay it. And then maybe he has a silence, and then suddenly, wait, what's my backup plan? And the backup plan, quite frankly, was not clean. in any way. We just saw the Druid win by playing Velen Mind Blast. So just a bit of a minute to work out whose deck is who. But yeah, we'll say Definition, little bit ropey there for me, but I did mention the matchup in itself does get funky very quickly.
Yeah, I think strategy early, very nice. Get the Auctioneer down, understand that it's not being challenged. I think that's a great spot for from him. I think that's very good play. I think then he got himself a little bit tied up. But then I think his recovery was also very good, where he switched to just the straight Togwaggle plan and abandoned the idea of the Hakar, and then just pushed for fatigue from there. I think that was very nicely done. And also the turn that immediately followed that with the Pyro Acolyte, just to get himself a few more resources. Because, of course, remember, not only did that take care of the Velen, which was a huge win for him, it also got him closer to that eventual lethal draw, which was the Mind Blast going alongside the Prophet.
It was, and that was a very spicy game, number 1 of Definition versus Saimia. It probably lasted 10 times longer than most of the games you've seen so far today, but we've got plenty more games that are coming up, so don't go anywhere, and we'll be right back with some more Hearthstone. Match of the day. Tons of Hearthstone's already been played, but we've got tons more coming up. We see Saimia on the right versus Definition on the left. Saimia just fanning himself down, just cooling down, getting ready for the next game. He did take a bit of a loss on game number 1 with Definition, taking a win with that Hakar Druid.
Yeah, and the fanning is fitting, I'd say, from Saimiao, because China has so far been on fire this tournament. They've had 2 victories out of 2. You're grinning. You know you love it, Raven. They've had 2 wins out of 2 to this point, and Saimiao honestly would have been the one player coming into this that I would have predicted would have been potential to fly the flag for China. So he does find himself 1-0 down now as we go into the next game. I believe even lock versus Priest this time around. Yes, it is. But Definition, that matchup that he just won, the Hakar Druid versus the Clone Priest, that was about the best possible matchup he had in the entire series after the bans went down. So I do stand by the idea that he is massively unfavored overall in this series, but if he was going to win, winning the kind of even matchups that he has, first rolling the even matchups that he has, and then winning the even matchups that he has, like Hakar Druid versus Clone Priest, was crucial for him.
Yeah, Definition himself said he felt unfavored going up versus Saimiao in his first match in the group, and so far, as he said, 1-0 up. It was a little bit shaky. It wasn't as solid as some of the other play we've seen today, but we'll see what he can do with Evenlock, a deck that I feel everyone's had a lot of practice with, players and casters alike, as it's just been a deck that's been around for so long, and I would say it's been averagely powerful for so long. It's been an acceptable Warlock deck since the beginning of the Genbaku era.
Yeah. I remember when the concept first came out. Like, I wish I could give credit to the first person I saw, but I think like an hour after Gen was announced, I remember someone tweeting, "You can play turn 3 Giant with this," which in itself is fantastic recognition, like Hearthstone recognition and foresight. But I remember seeing that and being like, yeah, but how often does that happen, right? And
often.
And then I actually did the maths. So I was like, oh yeah, that happens like half the time, right? Gotcha.
And then on top of that, if that's good enough, you can life tap for 1. Life tap for 2 was very, very powerful indeed. But let's get into the game and look at these opening hands. Saimiao does have double Gilded Gargoyle, which if you're going to play them in the deck, having them be able to just plop down early on is actually very, very powerful. They aren't one of the few minions in the deck that you don't want to come out of Clone. Particularly, you don't really care about them so much. You want them early to get to Clone, to maybe get to an emergency Psychic Screen, for example.
Very often, if they're in your deck, they are the minions that get in the way of guaranteed setups with Clone. They're minions number 8, 9, 10, depending on how many minions you have in there. And that means, because you only have 7 board spaces, when you rip a cloning gallery, if you have enough minions left in your deck, the Gargoyles can actually mess up your lethal push or whatever it is, and you can miss your Velen or your Malagos for lethal, your Radiant Elemental for the discounts, or even in defensive situations or value situations, you can miss your Lich King if that's the way your deck is going. So yes, they can be somewhat irritating, and that's one of the reasons why some builds we are seeing them get cut.
Right, and at least they do something on the board early on, because Clone Priest often has an issue of passing for the first 6 turns of the game and hoping they're not dead in that time, and then they start playing. So these Gargoyles are really good for Saimiao, just to even just half battle back against some of the cheaper Warlock minions that are often dropped down early to apply pressure in this matchup.
Yeah, this is Priest Wild Growth right here. This is a terrible version of even nerfed Wild Growth, a 3-mana 2/2 that gives you a coin. People complain about this deck, by the way, and it plays a 3-mana 2/2 that
because it always kills them on 9.
It never happens! I felt validated, whether it was yesterday or the day before, or whatever it was. We interviewed Ike, and he said that he has never killed someone on turn 7, 8, or 9 just with like cloning gallery into lethal. It doesn't
not
happen.
believe it.
It doesn't happen.
Every game. Every game. Whether I'm playing it, whether my opponent's playing it, it happens all the time. Let's see if Simon can make it happen though, because already Definition's just doing what the Even Warlock needs to do in this matchup, and that's just get the beatdown going, and this Twilight Drake is a great tool for doing that.
I am a little worried that I've chosen this particular game to double down on this point, because he is about to have his third coin in his hand, and all of his relevant lethal minions are still remaining in his deck.
I can't wait for this.
Yeah.
Speaking of relevant minions in the deck, no Mountain Giants as far as I can see for Definition. So he does have some powerful tools, but there is a large difference between having a Mountain Giant and not having it in almost every matchup. So as you said, it's kind of the cornerstone of the deck, to be completely honest. If Mountain Giant was rotated out, Even Warlock wouldn't be very, very good.
Yeah. And this is a poor matchup for the Even Lock, you know, somewhere in the 40% bracket, and a lot of that 40% is Mountain Giant lands early, isn't answered, runs wild. You know, once you get past that point, it's so tricky to do anything, because a lot of your other threats, you know, the Hooked Reavers, for example, they A, come down so late that they're in Psychic Scream territory, and B, to even get them down as threats in the first place, you have to lower yourself to a range where the Priest does not need to do anything fancy to kill you. You know, once you get down below 15, they really don't need the nuts cloning gallery combo to be able to lethal you.
Right, and you know, if you can't do and pretty much kill them before turn 9, the game's over anyway, so...
I'd like you to note that there is currently not a cloning gallery or any of the burst cards in hand to make that happen.
How many turns have we got? One more turn to draw it? Oh, dude, if it's drawn on 6, coin, cloning, dead.
There's no Mind Blast.
It doesn't matter,
There's
he'll
no
get
Holy
it.
Smite.
Lyra.
Okay.
Double Elemental. They're all there.
Okay.
Oh my god. I would love it. This would make my day. Maybe even my week. But for now, Definition's just going to continue marching on with any minions he can play, to be completely honest.
Yeah.
Just to start pounding as much damage as possible. I will say, having the Lich King available, you know, we talked about no Mountain Giant, but Lich King can generate a lot of damage in itself, whether that be through Frostmourne, a Death Coil, Anti-Magic Shell, a little bit weaker because of Scream, of course, but still, it's a lot of damage just from hand. It's all winced. There's a Mind Blast.
The Mind Blast is indeed drawn.
Look, things don't go my way that often, okay?
They don't. To be honest, I'm actually rooting for you.
Yeah, if this happens, I will just be happy for the rest of the week.
I'm actually on your side in this one.
This is really
weirdly
weird.
enough, your side is just directly opposed to my side, so I don't know how this is logically possible, but I'm going to make it work. Definition now just doing the best he can, trying to push through damage. I think this is the right play from him in terms of just saying, hey, if you don't have Psychic Scream or coin cloning gallery kill me, then you're under a lot of pressure, and Mass Hysteria is a very complex board state to navigate here.
Funnily enough, because we don't like to mention it much versus Priest, but look how bad this Anduin it would have been. Like, normally you're like, oh, coin Anduin?
Right.
Like, that gets the job done a lot of the time. That does nothing.
Right.
To the extent where Mass Hysteria does a much better job, and this Twilight Drake is just leading the pack right now, because this guy's immortal.
Yeah, speaking of immortal, though, Lich King is far from it, and I think Definition, just for a moment there, understood the stakes of the play that he was about to make. Turn 8, 8 mana, Lich King is green, it seems straightforward, but can he survive the alleviation that it would give Saimiao to just Anduin his Lich King on 8 here?
Part of me just wants to see double 4-drop, to be honest. Even if it's just a Hooked Reaver as a 4-4. You've just seen that Scream wasn't used, right? It was a Mass Hysteria which left more damage on the board.
Right.
So then you do it again.
I like it.
Well, yeah, if you
I like
scream me, I have way more stuff in hand still.
Yeah.
If you don't scream me, you are dead. Especially because there is this Bowmare for extra damage as well.
There is a Radiant being drawn, which does reduce a little bit of the burst potential, but now that he has got so much natural mana available with the coins, he will be able to coin out those that Radiant Elemental and get extra spells alongside a cloning gallery if he gets it from here. But Raven has just decided that he doesn't like Heartstone anymore, as Saimiao just manages to heal to full off his Shadow Essence pull and the Spirit Lash.
So for me, that turn was pretty much clone win the game. Because
No caveats. It doesn't
no, there's one
happen.
caveat. We said turn 9.
Yes, okay.
So I've still got one turn, okay?
Sure.
But yeah, but very, trying to wind ourselves back into serious town right now. That kind of turn is the reason the deck exists. Yes, it could do powerful OTKs, but mainly it doesn't do much early game, and then it can just reset. Apart from it resets on turn to turn 10, full mana, because those kind of Spirit Lashes are insane.
Yep.
All the work that Definition's done, all of the minions is used to just pressure, kind of just negated. It's just reset the game again, except my late game's better than yours.
I believe that was a 1 in 5 of remaining minions in his deck to be the Malagos there. Prophet Verlin obviously would have done a great job as well, just wouldn't have done enough damage to actually clear away the minions from the board on the other side. But again, Definition giving the proper respect to Shadow Reaper Anduin, just loading up the board with minions that are not going to die to that Shadow Reaper. Raven, sorry friend. It's just not your day, your week, your year, or your career.
It is my year.
Oh, that's true. Good
So,
point. Sorry,
incorrect.
I misspoke.
Yep. This just goes to show, isn't it? In all these nice stories and stuff, the good guy always wins. In the real world, guys, the bad guy always wins. It's very annoying. Yeah, Definition just always trying to give Saimiao a bad turn, or not give him a good turn, should I say, and doing a very good job of that throughout the whole game.
Malagos must be killed, or Definition must heal, or he is dead to second spell damage source plus Mind Blast on the following turn. That second spell damage source can be Velen, it can be Vivid Nightmare, whatever you want. Definition, I think, considering the implications, what exactly do I die to? Does he need 2 spells here? Does he need a double res? Is it ridiculous to play around this? But I think with the Spellstone in hand healing for 7, it's just, it covers all the bases, right? It does everything that I said he needed to do, kills the Mali and heals. I mean, Saimiao definitely not setting up a lethal out for himself.
Yep. This turn would have looked much more difficult without that Spellstone. Most importantly, without the Spellstone being 7. That's just a huge health gain, and a huge chunk of Malagos is already massive health removed. And I guess it just work out, do I want to trade in with my smaller minions or get rid of this Twilight Drake? But Twilight Drakes have been getting it done this game, and he doesn't particularly need a wider board to go into a Psychic Scream. Probably the safest turn, Saimiao's had.
Yeah.
To get Anduin online, and suddenly, again, the Anduin inclusion, which is not always played or hasn't been always played in this deck.
Correct.
You can see why people like it, because there are 3 coins, a Mind Blast, and a Vivid Nightmares alongside a Radiant Elemental, soon to be 4 coins too. That's just a lot of damage, no matter which way you look at it.
I do wonder, this thought always occurs to me, when people continue to play around Shadow Reaper Anduin, which I think I definitely would have done as well, and I think Definition was probably right to do, so this is not a criticism. It always feels like Shadow Reaper Anduin just comes down and has an impact anyway, like later in the game, right? It's such a difficult card to lock out, but I think the way that Definition navigated it, he's now in a position where he's punishing the Shadow Reaper Anduin with the bone there, whereas if it happened the other way around, it's just such a devastating blowout.
Yeah, it feels like Anduin does work when it's not board as well, right? Or when you don't have it, because the threat is always there. Definition now just looking a little bit dry, to be honest. Had so many minions, but with the Scream, he still technically has a lot of them. It's just they're in the deck and not in the hand. After seeing Anduin, Lich King comes down, and this Lich King pull could make or break the game. Doom Pact, not what you're looking for.
It's lethal, right?
I think so. With the coins, get the Vivid Nightmares down?
Yeah, Velen, Nightmare, coin, Mind Blast, coin, ping. Yep.
That looks like it. And as I said, Sol, this deck just always... Wait, was that?
Am I dumb?
It looked like it to me. So Velen Vivid gets there anyway. Creates 2 Velens.
Coin, coin, Mind Blast for 20. Coin, coin, ping for 2.
Yeah. Is that just Miss Lethal? Looked like it to me. And with no Spellstones in hand, that could be a big deal. If this Velen's cleaned up, there are still a lot of pings, there are still a lot of coins, and the Vivid Nightmare is still there. But with the Velen potentially gone this turn, and with Hellfire Spellstone, it can be gone if Definition so chooses.
Right.
Or a Doom Pact to discard the card, take no damage for yourself, also heal for none. Could have actually healed for a little bit there with the Hellfire combo. Can always save it for Clone, although are you expecting many minions left for Clone?
Yeah, I mean,
I just realized I've actually seen a lot of minions.
Not anything left. Yeah, I think there's a Lyra.
Zilliax?
Actually, that's it. Oh yeah, Lyra's the one.
And now there's always the weird question, here we go, is... So my health's scary, but do I tap? Well, yes, because your health's going to be even worse if you just let the game continue. So tapping often is the correct play if you're in need of some game-breaking cards, and the Nerubian Unraveler could potentially create a huge issue for Saimiao. He doesn't have a good way to kill it.
Velen. Lethal.
Okay. Exactly, more or less the same turn as last time. Looks like it's going to get there though without need for pings. Look at all the coins, a spare. Saimiao just wants to do it whilst holding onto some cash in hand as well, just in case. And it did look a little bit ropey there for just a second, as Saimiao could have done that, or a turn similar at least, a couple of turns ago, but did end up taking the win with the Clone Priest. And Definition gave it a good try, but we see the power of turns like that Spirit Lash turn from Clone Priest. Huge.
Yeah, and that wasn't a guaranteed situation, you know? It's not like Malagos coin Spirit Lash from hand that we see sometimes. It's not a cloning gallery that you know is going to pull your Mali and Velen, and then you get the Radiance as well, and it discounts your Spirit Lash. It wasn't a guaranteed spot. He just kind of ripped Shadow Essence and went, oh, hey, Mali, you were the best of the 5 or 6 options I had in my deck, and it really ended up giving him so much free time that he really didn't do a lot for the next 3 or so turns after that, apart from remove what he could from Definition's side of the board.
Yeah, and the big deal was it was exactly Malygos, because if it was Velen, the heal would have been there, but not the board clear, or effective board clear would have been there, and that just opened up to no return damage. Normally, it's like the old days of Reno. You used to play Reno on 6, but then there would be a push, right, again, to just lower them down.
PRD, post-Reno damage.
I forgot about that, to be honest. Okay, well, that Saimiao does even it up versus Definition. Both players having very close-cut games, and everything still to play for. Find out who's going to take the series right after this. This morning, the VOD, but how was that for you, Sol?
Yeah, buy the DVD. It's packed full of bonus content. Director's cut, optional extras, blooper reel, it's all in there.
Now I'm worried about what's been recording while we've been doing rehearsals.
Well, so little did you know, I'm actually admirable. All along, I've just been waiting for an opportunity to say huge draw and recommend someone plays Doomguard from hand, but it just hasn't come up this series.
Pull off the mask. Yeah. It's like, whoa. Now that was technology we do not have yet, unfortunately. But also, going back on some more things we show you for some reason, is the new cards of Gen and Baku you should craft, apparently, console.
I stand by that. You should actually still craft Gen and Baku, because, hey, you're going to get a dust refund when they get Hall of Famed anyway. That's just smart.
Yes, you were definitely heads up.
I was a genius. I galaxy brained that interview, and it was still relevant a whole expansion later. Genius.
Okay, somehow, as always, Sol's ended up looking okay, and all the rest of us look terrible. You should probably not be playing Azalina in Hunter, as there are other cards now that allow Hunter to gain more cards in hand.
Yeah.
But yes, moving swiftly on, let's get back into this matchup. It is Saimiao versus Definition. Both players managed to even it up now 1-1, with Saimiao taking a win with that Clone Priest. And we're moving swiftly on. Quest Rogue versus this Even Paladin again from Definition.
Even Warlock, you mean?
Even Warlock.
Yep, Quest Rogue, historically, probably my most love-hate deck in Hearthstone. There have been times with Quest Rogue where I've been so obsessed with it, I could not play any other deck. Like, I just could not bring myself to queue a different deck on ladder. I just had to play Quest Rogue. And there are times where I share the sentiment of probably most of the populace out there, which is whenever I queued into a Quest Rogue, I wanted to Alt F4 and play anything else that wasn't Hearthstone. So it's a very, very turbulent deck in that regards, but I do admire the tenacity of the deck to just keep on trucking through so many nerfs to key cards. And it's actually something that players mentioned when we interviewed them. It's like, oh, I actually really like Quest Rogue because I like having to adapt my strategy every time it gets nerfed. So next week, what's the nerf this time? All right, better learn how to play Quest Rogue again. Yeah, it's great.
Yeah, and to be honest, your description of your relationship with the deck has almost been on display throughout the competitive history of that deck, because I feel like we see some amazing games, amazing moments, like Hoy at the championship we had in China. Fantastic to watch. He parted it to an extreme level, and the games were insane. We also see games where they complete the quest on curve and kill their opponent, which feels quite unsatisfactory for at least one of those players. But let's see how this one's going to pan out. Valera the Hollow already in hand for Saimiao, so there's some form of late game cooked up. But I think most importantly right now, the Mimic Pod is just there to just start cycling through and get into the relevant tools in this matchup, which are...
Glacial Shard is very high on the list because there are minions that you are really not interacting with favorably without it. You really do have to stall until you can hit a Vanish or hit your quest to be able to contest the huge minions more fairly. Sonya, just about every matchup, if you can find Sonya Shadow Dancer, you're in business. Those are the first two that you're looking for, and then it's things like your Elven Minstrel to assist you in getting to more of those cards.
Were you ever surprised that the coin wasn't used up on that turn just to get Twilight Drake down? Because health totals don't matter so much, so losing the one.
Twilight Drake into question mark?
Shroom
Okay.
Hooked Reaver.
Okay.
So on, so on, so on.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm just saying, do you think this is a time to be as aggressive as possible because of the stall potential?
I think personally, I would have played it like this because, so 2/4 Taunt comes down, right? Like, coining the Twilight Drake only develops one extra power. And it's not like your 3/2 is easy for the rogue to remove because they can't deckhand it. It's behind a 2/4, so you're still pushing damage. And of course, you do have that ability of destroying the weapon, which then makes the deckhand kind of plays a lot more difficult. So I'm actually fine with playing it out like this because the big power turns are not really coin 4 for even lock. It's more like, coin 8 where things really come into play. So if you can make that kind of thing happen, I'm all for it.
I'm quite interested because it's not something I've seen with much level of interaction so far, is what effect the Nerubian Unraveler has in this matchup, because it's a very minion-based deck, but some of the biggest things that happen aren't always minion-based.
Yes.
So it's kind of just dotted around. I just wonder how much of a nuisance that card's going to be for Saimiao.
Right. It's football or soccer, and all of the minions are kind of just everyone passing the ball around midfield, and then the spells are the actual goals, the things that you get excited about, right? So yeah, I can see Nerubian Unraveler is just a whole free turn, right? Like if you can get the pattern down where you can see that your opponent is going to complete the quest and activate the quest next turn, which you quite often can. Nerubian Unraveler, free turn. It can really throw an entire spanner in the works.
Completely negates prep, completely just stalls out Vanish. You know, a lot of people have been taking this card in this tournament especially, and it's just correct, I think. I don't even think there's much discussion as to whether you should at least play them in the decks that they can fit in.
Yeah. I mean, again, it's strategy dependent, right? Like if you're bringing the anti-aggro lineup, then maybe they're not so essential, and that seems weird to say because that's kind of what Definition has going on. But I believe he's just playing the one in his even lock, and that's it. They're nowhere else throughout his lineup, and that kind of plays to what you were saying. Whereas even lock just kind of has this 1 or 2 spots in the deck where something weird always goes, right? Second Spellbreaker, Nerubian Unraveler.
Mojo Master.
Yeah, Mojo Master Zihi, those kind of options.
See already now, Definition is actually just piling a lot of damage onto the board, and there is the Glacial Shard there, but with no bounce effects, it's just extremely limited in its power level. And so now Saimiao's just had to play it and say, I hope you don't clear it off, because I would really like to draw a bouncer next turn and keep bouncing this Glacial Shard just to stall out some damage.
Well, even then, I don't know whether he can necessarily afford enough time to continue to bounce the Glacial Shard, because he's already invested quest progress into his Vicious Scale Hides. And when drawing 2 of them off the Mimic Pod, that's basically what he's been locked into. So it's just not, the draw is not really lined up here for Simiao. And Definition, even without the huge pressure opening, just by playing 2-drop into 2-drop, just got through so much pressure early that the Quest Rogue has been found a bit wanting.
Deckhand, pretty good pickup there, because he can now kill off the Unraveler without having to expend any health. And now I guess,
Scale Hide's down.
Yeah, I'm just looking at
Scale
him like,
Hide's down.
ouch.
That's a reset.
Pass? I don't know.
Yeah.
And one of the problems you have to know, I didn't know it right at the beginning, is Valera the Hollow being in the opening hand is just -1 card.
Yeah.
And that is a problem when the deck has been nerfed to an extent where you really need everything you can get hold of to even make the deck work. Never mind, have blowout turns or anything, but just to get the deck cooking, you need to have access to as much card draw as possible. And I don't know.
Oh, to say that is the best draw in his deck is an understatement. 3 out of 5, I believe, current progress. He got there it is. He got double Scale Hide off the Mimic Pod, then he bounced 1 with a Shadow Step. So that is the remaining natural copy of Scale Hide in his deck, which gives him some hope towards moving towards this.
I think it would be the best draw in his deck if he just wasn't very dead.
Well, I mean, he's minstraling here. He has Glacial Shards, Wax Elementals, all that kind of nonsense to be able to potentially draw.
Just because he's used 1 of each already. Yeah. That's all. There's been 1 Wax and 1 Glacial down.
And he didn't get anywhere near those. So your assessment was correct, and he is indeed very dead.
Wow, and that's just the way it is for that game. I mean, there aren't even many words to describe it. He didn't get anything going quick enough. No sort of, or very few bouncers to enable to accelerate the game. He had the prep ready for the quest.
He did.
He just couldn't get the quest done. And on the other side, Definition was just like, I'm just going to play a minion every single turn.
Yeah.
And then you're going to be dead.
And I think his Nerubian Unraveler timing, I think it was a nod to the far left card in Simiao's hand potentially being Vanish as well. That's where his read was. I probably misspoke when I said the Vicious Scale Hide was the best card in the deck at that point, because Vanish certainly was. Yes. That's what he needed to get, especially alongside that preparation that he had, although he didn't have the tools in hand to be able to tempo out behind the Vanish anyway, so probably would have ended up being raw Vanish, and at that point, it's all coming back down in full force again the following turn, and he still would have had to have found that Scale Hide afterwards. So, yeah, just the amount of pressure that came through early for Definition was just too much for Simiao to keep up with.
It is, yeah, and Simiao still has his Rogue left, as you can see, and also has Death Rattle Hunter, and the deck Definition has left is his Odd Warrior. And I don't know about you, Sol, but very early on, it was like, oh, Death Rattle Hunter just crushes Warrior. It's been you've got so many big tools, and then you have the cubes to be able to generate even more minions, Rexar, so on, so on. But recently, I've been playing the matchup, and because of the way Odd Warrior's been built, I'll talk about Definition's list, 2 cubes, there's the 2 Direhorn Hatchlings, but mainly the 2 cubes and the 2 Faceless. It means that you can actually just get beaten up if that's how they choose to play. And then Death Rattle Hunter doesn't have great defensive options, but that's that matchup, at least in my opinion. But what do you make of the Warrior into the Rogue matchup?
It's Odd Warrior versus Quest Rogue. I mean, what do you want from me? It's a horrible, horrible matchup for the Odd Warrior. I think we saw a classic Heartstone moment, in my opinion, at BlizzCon in the HGG finals, where Hunter Ace and Team Norway came out and said they were going to win the series by beating Quest Rogue with Odd Warrior. Turned a bit Lorinda for you there for a second.
I was going to say thank you, Lorinda.
Said they were going to end the series by beating Quest Rogue with Odd Warrior, and then went and did it at the first attempt, which is just crazy because it's one of the worst matchups that we have left remaining in the game for sure.
Okay, and do you think this newer build, as I mentioned, similar to what I talked about to the Death Rattle Hunter, has any better matchup than the old just armor?
It has moved it up significantly from 0. Let's put it that way.
It's now 1.
Yeah, I mean...
That's a significant increase from 0.
Yeah. Maybe it's approaching the 25-30% range. Just to go that way.
Okay, well, the good thing for Definition is this, he doesn't have to win this game to win the series, whereas Simiao does. All the pressure is on. Let's kick it off. Tankmaster over Spark, the Heartstone, the Cube, and the Zola. So I would say at least pretty good tools to just have to just drop and dump down onto the board to start trying to trade off all pressure, Simiao in general. With Simiao's hand, what are you making of this one? Sonya always looks good to me, but the Novice Engineer is looking pretty good too, just for cycle.
Novice, Shadow Step, Sonya, and another bouncer. Yep, sign me up. Sign me up.
Sign me up.
Yeah. So good, they just happen by accident. It's incredible.
It's only because I noticed them and made them sound better.
Right.
Give them my nod of approval across the desk. See how Definition's just going to try and approach this, and you see right away
3-3.
how weird the matchup is. Like, oh, this character that has a very powerful ability. Nope, 3-3. Done. Next, moving on.
Yeah, I would say that Definition has a very nice hand for the matchup. Daihorn Hatchling, Cube itself being so clutch just to be able to potentially build some kind of board state. You do open yourself up to a vanish if that happens, but also the Super Collider, which the problem that Odd Warrior has in this matchup is, yes, they can stack up enormous amounts of armor because they're not being pressured for quite a long time, but it doesn't mean anything because they can't turn that armor into board control, right? Like, they have Reckless Flurry, which is a card that literally does that, but then you lose all of that armor.
Yeah, you often can't afford to, right?
Whereas Super Collider is a card that can incrementally turn that huge amount of armor that you have into board control, which is a much nicer feeling for you because you can keep control of the game for 3 or 4 turns straight using Super Collider and a couple of minions, whereas Reckless Flurry only answers one question and actually disadvantages you heavily for doing so.
Yeah, it's often correct to not play that card a lot. So we see already where the Glacial Shard has come down for Simiao, and we'll probably get the flavor of what he wants to do in this game, and with this current situation, to be honest, because we can see, as you mentioned, Definition's hand, that Daihorn Hatchling, then this Cube, or Collider, like the 5 drops can be played in whatever order's relevant, and it's a problem. Even Zola to create another 5 drop to keep playing. And like at the moment, Simiao has the value plays ready to go. But now he has to just consider how he wants to just worry about the odd chance that he does get beaten down by this one.
Yeah, so this is the key to not losing this matchup in embarrassing fashion as the rogue player, is the Warrior will do their best to convince you that you are under pressure. Do not believe them. You are not, right? Like, if you're alive at
But
2,
they keep saying it, so
I know. They just keep insisting it. They're banging on my door and telling me that they have lethal. They just don't. If you're alive at 2 on board, you're alive, right? Like, that's basically what it comes down to. Like, Super Collider face is about
I was going to say, I love the way you went for 2 there, because it's like, but Super Collider's all. I can imagine the chat now. It's
yes. My life is built to avoid people on the internet with exactly that voice.
I'm glad I only used that voice on the internet then, because casting would be really awkward right now.
What am I talking about? I am one of those people. How can I avoid myself? That's nonsense.
Saul has no mirrors in his house?
No. I don't appear in mirrors anyway. I don't have a reflection.
So true. So very key as well that the Sonya just being Shadow Stepped as just the 1-drop is just such a fundamental play in Quest Rogue, and has been no matter what version of the deck exists. Having the 1-drop that generates even more value is huge, and already we look at the glaring difference between this game and the previous game for Simiao, and that's he gets the quest up.
Yes.
Pretty easily.
And it's honestly, he drew Sonya. I mean, Sonya is such an easy street card, and I don't mean that to just disparage the design of the card, or mean any game that you play that involved Sonya you didn't have to put thought into, but what it does is it just relaxes your brain and your thought process as to how you need to navigate Quest Rogue, because your quest is done. You have Sonya in hand.
You can often plan a couple of turns less ahead,
yes,
right?
exactly. Like, the answer to how am I completing quest is very often Sonya, so just work backwards from there and like work out what the rest of your turns are.
Now, though, there is still going to be potential for just a lot of stuff, cubes into cubes, for example, just to create a wide board. And already, this is what I was talking about, where, it might not turn out this way, but Warrior can do stuff, which feels weird when you're not the Warrior and you're like, you shouldn't be allowed to do this. You have way loads of armor. Stop playing minions as well.
Way loads of armor.
Stop it. This is the mindset I get when I play.
So I was about to say, if there's any chance for Definition here, then Simiao is going to have to even off the back of multiple Novice Engineer rebuys, find his Vanishes to be buried very deep in his deck, because once a Vanish comes down on a pressure game, the Definition is setting up pretty much exclusively with Carnivorous Cubes. It's going to be very hard for him to redevelop that kind of pressure again. But this is a very nice turn for Definition.
The perfect.
Yep.
Chip the shield.
Yep.
Boom.
Exactly
Gone.
the kind of thing I was talking about. Just that Super Collider now allows him to consolidate his board presence and continue pushing him through.
Yeah, my big question now is, without a prep, that card helps, but without a prep, is there enough refill for a Vanish to be like super relevant? It's going to be good, don't get me wrong, but is it game winning when Definition's like, well, I am nowhere near dead. I have 2 Super Colliders and an emergency switch of Reckless Flurry and even a second Armor Up Reckless Flurry turn. Can Definition just get enough of this stuff down to finish up the game?
No.
Okay, no, I'm genuinely asking, because if you look at the hands, right?
Yes.
It looks like Definition has the threats and the answers.
Yes.
And it does not look like that's strictly the case for Samiao. You
So
understand my point?
I do, and this is a very nebulous topic to try and explain, but Definition, the way Odd Warrior functions in this matchup is that they have to build so much pressure up early that they force the Rogue to use cards for poor value in order to stay alive. If they don't do that, then there's no way that you can outvalue them playing 1 slow threat a turn, right? Like, at best, once they get to turn 10, they can play 2 moderately threatening 5-drops in a turn, right? And that's about where they get to. Quest Rogue can just crush that with how cheap their 4/4s are and how easy their ability is to go infinite with repeating bounce effects, especially when they get under Valera form. So if you're going to outvalue the Rogue and keep pressure up through the late game, you need to have pressured them so much early that, like, the Zola is gone, the Sonya is gone. These are cards that they've been forced to use early on, so they can't potentially go infinite later.
I know I'm going to be proven wrong here, but I feel like, especially with those Grizzlies, these 2 Reckless Flurries are huge, because when he lowers the armor, Hero Power Reckless Flurry clears the board, and the Grizzlies are completely safe in terms of health. So there might be enough time.
Okay.
Mainly, and I will say this, there are no Scale Hides yet.
Scale Hides
is my big
Scale
ticking
Hides are
factor
huge,
here.
yes. But, you know, Samiao...
When we put into Scale Hides, never mind!
Samiao does have the ability to keep drawing very heavily. He does have duplicable Novice Engineers. He just ripped that Mimic Pod there. So, you know, he can just continue to draw and survive for quite some time still.
And with 1 Vanish already gone from Samiao, as Definition, do you think he just feels comfortable to just 2 more 5-drops? Or, you know, Zola, chuck it on the board. If you Vanish, whatever. If you don't Vanish, it's as big a chance I get to win.
Yeah, it's likely that he kind of has to just pull the trigger as hard as he can in most spots. He can't really afford to slow play, because if he slow plays, then a turn where Samiao just plays a bunch of minions kind of challenges what he does anyway, right? Like, you need to do enough to make your opponent need that second Vanish.
Slightly surprised. No Glacial Shard on the face.
I think he potentially wants to save that shard again for the following turn, so that's his plan for the dupe on the next turn. He wants to dupe shard a second time around, which I think is reasonable.
Oh, okay, this works as well. Reckless Flurry going down. I said popping those cubes, which is 2 Grizzlies and 2 Stonehill Defenders. Stonehill Defenders, for Definition's sake, maybe they get 2 damage between them, and that's good.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because they're literally going to die, right? But, like, any damage is better than 0 damage.
Mimic Pod again. This is what Samiao needs. He needs to cycle. Doesn't really matter how empty his deck gets, really, because he has Lab Recruiters remaining, I believe, which he can still go infinite with.
And there we go. So we can get 2 now and 2 next turn at a minimum without bounces.
But at some point, it doesn't look like Samiao is going to find a way to set up lethal himself here anytime in the near future. So he might have to plan to go to the long game, you know, set up some kind of infinite loop so he doesn't fatigue in the late game with Lab Recruiters, with Scale Hides. These are all possibilities of things that keep you alive for ridiculous amounts of time as you continue to duplicate them with Valera and Bouncer Effects or Zola.
So let's say he heals 8.
Yep.
He only takes maybe 8 back. And then this flurry can clear off some of the board as well. Because unfortunately for definition, Dynamatic looks perfect, and then you realize it's my own stuff too.
Yes.
So Dynamatic not great right now. Oh, never mind. Definition's going to go.
Let's see what happens. I mean, it might as well, right? Like,
okay, I thought that was just going to nail 3 off 3. Then I was like, wow, that is impressive.
there wasn't a huge downside to it, right? Because it wasn't going to kill any of his own minions, and if it hit 1 on the opposing side of the board, his Super Collider does the rest anyway.
Yeah, I guess for me it was just the unfortunate part of just the if you hit something to 4, right, specifically. But the Super Collider wouldn't have worked, right? Because the 1 health.
Oh, sure.
Kills
yeah,
it before
Good
it
point.
bounces.
Good point. Good point.
We'll say as well, Omega Assembly can lead to some strange situations in itself. Maybe you get a mech on, the second you get a War Gear and it can combine onto a mech that's already on the board. That pushes a lot of damage. But here is the Vanish of Definition, quite visibly like, I was getting so close.
Hatchling does die, and then Matria. Oh, okay. I was about to say, silver lining, Hatchling died instead of going back to hand, so there is a 6/9 in the deck, but then it has to come off the top immediately and burn into the ether. And now Definition is in the point of the game where, like I said, turn 10, he can play 2 moderately threatening 5-drops per turn.
And I think he still has a cube left, right? Because he played 2 and 1 with Zola? I think?
Possibly, yes.
Oh no, because he has Zola in hand, never mind.
Yeah, but it was vanished.
Oh, sorry, yeah, it was Vanished, yeah. Yeah. Okay, I'm not going crazy. Odd Warrior Games, send me Loopy, I'm sorry. Shadow Step's looking nice as well. Still holding on to the Scale Hide. It's definitely getting tricky. Definitely understand that Samuel is still looking absolutely fine here, but it only takes a misstep or 2 to just accidentally throw away a key minion, and then suddenly you're in trouble. But Zola now, with Scale Hides, means that this is going to be almost an endless loop, because that'll buy him enough time to get that Lab Recruit alive and start cycling to the infinite.
Yeah, I don't remember the numbers exactly, but I believe the Infinite Scale Hive loop keeps you alive theoretically into well into double digits fatigue. And then on top of that, he has the Lab Recruiter, which can just prevent fatigue entirely if he goes for the Infinite loop with that instead.
This Dynamatic into the weapon is looking possible. I won't say likely, because someone's going to pull me up on it and be like, well, mathematically likely, what's this? It's like, well, sorry. But you know what I mean. It can kill off the 3 minions, and the weapon clears up the 2 higher health ones.
Funny you should mention that, because Definition mentioned that he actually got his name, not as you might assume because he's a fan of dictionary definitions and a fan of language. He's actually named it after mathematical definitions, because he's actually a math student. So if you wanted to know what the definition of mathematically likely is, there's the man to ask right there.
Yeah, definition.
Yeah.
That's what I said. Didn't quite work out so well. It's not how I saw this going in my mind. But you still just have Wrecker's Flurry that maybe not for this turn, but he can use as just an emergency switch. But now, especially with just the draws that have happened, the early Valera, the Scale Hides unlimited at this point, you start to wonder for Definition. Does even he think he can win this game?
Down to the bare bones of the deck from Saimiao. Doesn't matter too much how quickly he draws these remaining cards, because as we've mentioned, he does have so many ways available to prevent fatigue from being a factor. The only danger in terms of drawing cards is that his hand becomes too full, and then he ends up, burning cards or burning the shadow that duplicates the cards for Valera. That does spawn at the start of your turn, so if you start the turn with a full hand, you're not getting it.
And as a small note, once this cycle starts to happen, Saimiao's turns are extremely predictable.
Yes. You do the thing, and then the next turn you do the thing again until your opponent explodes.
Well, I just mean with the flurry and brawls and shield slams, maybe if someone messes up, Definition can create a window to say, actually, you don't get to attack with these 2 turns worth of Scale Hides, because I killed them before you attack, and then that fatigue is enough to do something. I'm not saying it will happen, I'm just saying it could happen. Prep.
Yep, Samuel does have to chew through a whole second Super Collider now. He would have liked, personally, from his greedy perspective, to see that card be buried a little bit lower down, because it is one of the hardest for him to be able to deal with. Oh, did he just have it here?
Yeah,
No, he's just going to... Okay, he's just using Boar instead, just going for damage, diverting off the Scale Hide plan. Right. Yeah, if you're at 30, there's no real reason to use the Scale Hide, because whether you use the Scale Hide or don't, you still start the next turn with a Scale Hide and a Zola in your hand, right? So it's as if you've activated the loop, but he's just done it with Stone Tusk Boar instead.
Yeah, and also as well, this does technically leave him with more mana, so
yep,
it's efficient in that way. If you were at full health, you actually save 1 mana every turn, which maybe you want to use that mana, maybe you don't. And I feel like this is a point in a game, especially a high pressure game. We're at the Winter Championships, right? So all these players are feeling the pressure. I don't care what anyone says, but when the game you feel like is so won, is when I stress out the most, because you think, okay, I've done this. Have I though? What if this happens? You know what I mean? You might even overthink.
Sure.
And and one slip up, if he doesn't quite do the infinite loop correctly, which is very difficult to mess up, but you know what I mean? If you just don't do something quite right, you can throw it away, and that's just because you've overthought what should be a simple matter. Right.
I'm almost out of cards.
And now, by going with the Boar, he then Shadow Step the Boar at the end of the turn, which essentially makes him Boar profit. He ends the turn with more Boars than he started with, which is a nice situation to be in when you're so close to pushing lethal. But now, as you would perhaps expect for the fact that Sai Miao has all but one of his cards, he has everything he needs to make this game go infinite from his perspective in whatever method he would like to do. Lab Recruiters put Boars in the deck, Zola duplicates the Lab Recruiter. This is a sequence that never ends. And this is why Odd Warrior cannot win this matchup unless they kill the Quest Rogue. The control deck has to play the aggro, and it's one of the most ill-equipped control decks in the game at having to do that.
If you asked me 5 years ago, would you be in a professional setting and someone would say Boar profit to you, and you would completely understand and think it was relevant, I would have said no. But here we are, so it's like...
You didn't see yourself fronting a pig-based church then?
Believe it or not, no. It wasn't something I saw myself doing. What's your 5-year plan? Oh yeah, I need to get involved in Boar profit. So anyway, we're talking gibberish because this game, as you quite rightly described, is 90%, 99% over. There are certain random aspects, as you've just seen. The Omega Assembly can give Definition some mechs to play with. Is it ever enough? I was looking at the Faceless Manipulators and thinking, is there something that can go on? Can Definition go infinite himself?
Yeah.
No?
No, he cannot.
Is the answer, but you've got to think about these things.
I will describe the way in which Hunter Ace and Team Norway used to defeat this matchup in HGG in that example that I gave at the start. They picked a 2/6 Cornered Sentry off a Stonehill Defender very, very early in the game, and then held it for 7, 8, 9, 10 turns, some ridiculous amount of time. And then once the Rogue had activated the quest, they played Cornered Sentry and then double Mind Control tech, which completely swung the state of the board so that they had a bunch of 4/4s and the Rogue didn't, and that was enough pressure after both Vanishes had been used to end the game, right? Like, that's the kind of creative plan that you have to make something happen in this matchup.
And cards in your deck you have to have, in which Definition does not have Mind Control text.
No. You can see how much freedom Sai Miao has here to just basically make whatever play he wants, as long as he ends the turn with a Lab Recruiter, some kind of fast, impactful minion, so a Scalehide or a Boar, and a Zola in his hand. As long as he does that, the play is very... I won't say it doesn't matter, but the percentage win rate of each play you can make if you end the turn in that situation is fractions of a percentage different.
No, I think... I'm not even sure what's possible here for Definition, to be honest. I mean, none of his mechs even have magnetic, right? Oh, the Beryllium Nullifier does. So Bulldozer with Beryllium Nullifier afterwards, does that ever get you enough damage to get
Sure.
through. Like, I know I'm stretching, but I'm just trying to think of a reason for Definition to continue.
I like that plan, honestly, right there. Just fire off the brawl, try and win it with the 6-9, and if not, hold your hands up and say, all right, I tried. And I want to rewind back about 10 minutes. It feels like an hour, but it was about 10 minutes, where I said the key to that matchup is to not believe that you're under pressure. You believed for large periods of that game that the Odd Warrior had real pressure on the Quest Rogue, and 9 times out of 10, 90 times out of 100, 95 times out of 100, they don't. They're just creating the illusion that you are under pressure, that you have a clock on you. And I think Saimiao did very, very well to resist that urge to do anything stupid, hasty, or reckless in terms of ruining his game.
Yeah, and I will say as well, the Valera available on curve that game proved, you know, it's very, very significant, because you saw Definition had the game plan. He tried to put on the pressure, and he got close. And without the Valera, maybe it wouldn't have been as straightforward for Saimiao. But yeah, it's an incredibly difficult matchup to win with that Odd Warrior, and Saimiao takes it and then evens everything up again. All to play for these two players now. Only one more game left. Is China going to continue to dominate? Find out after this.
Also has a very high chance of being a later opponent for you in the group. If you beat them, they can come back and then you beat them again. If you lose to them, they can get knocked down and then you can potentially lose to them again. So that lineup matchup that you have against your first opponent in the group is huge. And if you win that first matchup, as Raven was saying, it probably means that you are positioned well to be able to do that and are then in a great spot for the rest of the group.
All right, as we get into game number 5, and that's been happening all day, to be completely honest. Just strong lineups, just having edges over their initial matches.
Yeah.
And this has probably been the closest matchup we've had all day so far. But I do think how varied the lineups are in this tournament is pretty surprising to me, to be honest.
Yeah, and you were talking about kind of the improvements in this matchup from the Odd Warrior side, which is something that I definitely agree with. And there are certain additions to the deck and certain tech cards that you would like to see in your mulligan that can help out as well. Like that beaky boy that we see on Definition's side can be a huge, huge help in the matchup, potentially even as an early game play to stop a Devilsaur egg spiraling early on.
Yeah, and it's going to be a big problem as well, because Definition actually runs 2. It's not even a one-off, runs double.
2 beaky boys?
2 beaky boys against a Defender of Argus, which we just see drawn from Saimiao, which is, again, a kind of a tech card choice to help versus some of the aggro matchups, but this might be a tough one. Katharina, Winter Wisp, and a Devilsaur Egg with a Play Dead, though. Those are some of the cards you do want to just get things cooking as the Death Rattle Hunter. What you don't want generally against Odd Warrior is, you know, just the bombs, for example, just the slower tools in the deck that aren't really going to have an effect in the early game. You want to get things turned up. Now, Definition probably just decided actually whether he wants to just Mega Assembly on 1, just to find a decent deck to play out, because there are a lot of good ones in this deck. Dynomatic being sort of culprit number 1, I would say.
Right. We'll see a slow start here from both players, especially now Definition has turned down that opportunity for turn 1 in Mega Assembly. Just a couple of hero powers back and forth, but this interaction upcoming now is going to be very important for the way that the remainder of this game plays out. I was talking about keeping the owl for Definition. He did end up doing so, immediately rewarded. Saimiao just now recognizes that he's just going to have to be a little bit slower than he might have wanted throughout these early turns.
I was going to say, yeah, it's okay. Can Defender of Argus and trade off the owl. It's pretty good. But yes, the flanking strike's going to be a little bit better than that turn and just generate a 3/3 wolf whilst clearing off that beaky boy.
Naribian Unraveler, not necessarily the matchup that it's aimed at coming into, but can still be very, very powerful on key turns to prevent reckless flurries and brawls and the like coming down when you're loading up a big board state.
Yeah, I think it's the difference between locking out turns against some decks and just making them pay more for turns they're going to do anyway. You know, you can't brawl and develop a 5-drop in that turn. It's that kind of scenario that Unraveler's going to get done versus the Odd Warrior. That's going to be the consideration now as we see the Shield Slam just quickly be chosen there for Definition, because you just don't want them to cube it. You use the owl you had in your hand. You don't want them to cube Grizzlies, because outside of brawls, this deck can't really kill them. There's no good way for this deck to deal 12 damage.
Yeah. Flurry Brawl or Brawl on like in the super late game. Yeah.
I killed the bears.
Yeah.
What about the dinosaurs?
Unity, precision,
Definition actually seems very happy that Ziliax is this play that's coming down here. And what he was particularly fearful of in this spot.
Rexar.
Maybe. I guess, yeah.
Because it's just a low it. Okay, hit me
I
for 3, I heal for 4.
Obviously Rexar is the fearful card. You as the warrior, you love it when your opponent's Rexar is bottom 5 or whatever it ends up being. But I don't necessarily think it's correct to just jam Rexar on 6 in the matchup because it is a slow card. And quite often I like to just play my faster cards out first and just try and keep pressure going and then fall back on Rexar when I'm kind of out of stuff to do.
Yeah, I guess with my knowledge of the hand, Rexar would have been a good turn there because
for sure.
Because excuse me, everything else is not great until Katrina. Right?
Kind of the thread I'm pulling at here is if that reaction from Definition was in regards to Deathstalker Rexar, like based on the play Ziliax Candle Shot, do you think it's a good read that your opponent doesn't have Rexar in that position?
No, I think it's a fair read, yeah.
Okay.
I think there are a lot of people who would just play Rexar. You've got the time. They haven't dropped any of their big 5 drops. You know, they're not cubing anything per se. Like, get Rexar down while you can, because maybe late game you just don't have the time, or you do have the time, but you're going to be a little bit punished for it. A bit of a slower turn. And mainly because turn 7 sucks.
Yeah.
So if you hero power Rexar turn 7 and make a 5 drop, fantastic. You see Grizzly number 2 get pulled out by Katrina Winter Wisp. And now, this is kind of what I was talking about earlier. He can brawl. He can shield slam. It just costs more and is more annoying and can't develop extra things behind it. So Unraveler, not stopping him doing anything, just making it feel worse.
I wonder.
Shield Slam Reckless Flurry is guaranteed to be a full board clear here, so I like it. My idiot peanut brain was thinking Reckless Flurry and then Shield Slam. Oh no, you don't have any armor left. But of course, doing it the other way around does end up being a guaranteed clear. Nothing's coming out with more than 12 health in that position anyway.
But then look at the difference, right? That was 4 extra mana paid, which might not sound a lot with what he's got in hand, but he stopped him hero power with that Unraveler. So those little things can help. But the problem now is Samuel just doesn't have a lot in the bank. He has all the activators, and I think he'd like Rexar right about that, to be honest. But Definition can start doing something about this.
Yeah, this is around the period of the game where I usually would find myself playing Rexar, which, you know, don't get me wrong, it still ends up being a keep for me with the intention of playing it around this point in the game, but I do like, you know, going through more proactive options first.
I don't think I've seen someone pick a Discover faster. I didn't even think all 3 cards were popped up. I think this one was the first. Yep, that'll do. Because cleaning up Houndmaster Shaw that well is very, very good. Now, I mean, I don't really know what Simeon's supposed to do. Deadly Shot. Is it ever Flanking Strike Deadly Shot?
Gosh, that's ugly.
I am saying bad things, but they are the best of a bad bunch right now, so
yeah.
This is one of those times you can't shout at me for being dumb, because I think you have to do dumb things sometimes.
This is kind of an argument that I was processing in my head, is that you kind of have a 3-3 to play anyway, as opposed to using the flanking strike, but this is a 3-3 that's very valuable in terms of the board states that you can generate with kind of cube plays later on, right? Especially if you can stick a Builder Beast to the board. So it's kind of just a debate about whether you find flanking strike more valuable, but on the immediate turn following, Samuel does get really nice value out of that flanking strike. So.
Worked out in the end.
Yeah, and I think with that additional copy of Play Dead in his hand, he was happy giving up the other activator as opposed to the kind of tempo card with Flanking Strike. And then, yes, drawing the second copy of Play Dead immediately after that, it looks like the right decision. But there is one player here who's been waiting for his value engine, but he now has to stare across the board as Definition is the man who picks up the value engine in Dr. Boom Mad Genius, and even now with the ping is able to fully eliminate the board state.
Also as well, shout out, I think that was Observers that hovered over Morabi, just to give us a glance of what it could be. Or maybe Definition was reading it. I could have translated that easily. What does it do? Nothing. We don't need to read the card text.
Perfect.
Nothing.
Yeah, nailed it.
Oh, Samiao finally can play these play deads, but is it even enough? It sounds weird. Oh yeah, egg, double play dead. That's effectively 3 5/5s minimum across a couple of turns. Definition just kills it. Not really a huge problem.
Samiao currently has the face of a man who is 17 cards deep into his Death Rattle Hunter with no Rexar in sight in the one matchup where you just beg and pray for the Death Knight to bless you.
Yeah, and this bit of a nod to the future as well, because the Death Knights are going to be rotated out.
Yes.
So you cannot play these, certain decks and just say, well, worst case, I'd draw my Death Knight and then have a game plan. That won't exist going forward. This is what the world's a glimpse into the future.
And there is that second IMB cow that you mentioned. 2 copies played in the deck for Definition, and Samiao needed some serious gas. And finally, the cube has been picked up. It's as if Samiao's deck is doing everything it can to torture him at the moment.
Very real problem as well, because obviously we talked about the no Rexar, right? But there's also no Katharina. Now there are no eggs. How do you even generate a beast to cube? Like, there's nothing you can cube.
Never mind that. You're staring down 12 damage on board.
He did draw Rexar though.
He did.
He clears off the owl with this. Most importantly, gains armor. Is it too little too late? I think it might be, but this is a chance.
Yes.
Based on this beast.
Yes, I think he is unfavored from this position, even with the power of Deathstalker Rexar, because it is, as I mentioned earlier, still slow. The one thing that he has working for him, if he can find a beast here with a decent pile of stats for 4 mana or less, and he can then immediately just cube play dead it on the following turn, particularly if that beast has rush or some way of dealing with his opponent's board. I don't even know if such a magical combination is possible, but he needs some way of converting this cube play dead combination in his hand into tempo as quickly as possible, because he needs to win the board back before he can grind out the warrior, which is his goal from this point.
Yep, Scale Hide being the key one that would make beasts like that to happen. But it did go for the Rhino, which I do agree with the first pick, even though it was a 5 mana beast. But there's the and this is exactly what I was talking about. Samiao 100% been unfortunate with the way these draws have gone, and running into the deck building of Definition with 2 IMB Cowls being very powerful in this matchup. But Faceless, Cubes, just the mechs and the Dire Horns anyway. There's actually a lot of punch to this deck if you're not careful. And just as much, Definition could Faceless an opponent's cube and get some beef that way, so.
All right, say it with me, chap. Bloat, Bat, Poison.
Here we go.
Nope.
None of those look like Blowbat or Poison. None of those look like Blowbat or Poison, apart from the one on the right, which does have Poison. I believe, to me, you can't track into a win. That's not how the card works.
But he's going to try it anyway.
Yeah, why not at this point? This Spider Bomb needs to go off 18 times. You don't have Spider Bomb into double play dead. If you had a bit more mana.
Theoretically
Spider Bomb
alive on
double
the
play
board
dead
here.
cube.
Yeah, if he's theoretically alive on the board here if he hits both of the 6/10s, but even then there was the Super Collider from hand. We kind of joked about it in the previous game. Would have been somewhat fitting if it had come out and end the series. And Definition, the man that I said was the definition of unfavored in this series, is the definition of delighted in this position, because he has won what I still believe was a very unfavored series for him in the end, bringing it home with a matchup that, despite getting better, I still believe is unfavored for the Odd Warrior.
Right.
But he had a very high pressure start and a very well-built deck for the matchup as well, with those 2 copies of IMB Cow, which really just stifled anything that Simeow could get going.
Yeah, and just yet again, I feel like it's becoming a theme for this championship is that it feels like each one of these players is bringing their own style, unique lineup. We're seeing a lot of differences, and seeing those clashes become very interesting already just because there are some completely one-sided matchups, and then there are some matchups like this, which definitely were unfavored, but clearly not unwinnable. So, the games that we've had gone today have been very impressive so far.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the HCT Winter Championship. My name is TG, and I'm joined by the Admiral. That's Admirable. And we're about to jump into the 6th initial match of the day. It's Ike versus ThunderUp, a match that I've been particularly excited about. How about you? That's Admirable.
I'm always pretty excited to watch Ike play. I've been a big fan of his for a long time, and he's become a good friend over the years. And why are you excited about it, though? I'm curious why you're excited about it.
Odd Paladin. That's why I'm excited about it.
Okay.
Was revved up for Murloc Paladin earlier on in the day when we saw it from Viper. One of the reasons that I picked him as my prediction. But Ike was one of the few players to make the read the Odd Paladin be good, and also one of the only players to bring it. I think he is the only player to bring it.
Yes.
But there's another aggressive Paladin, but it's a Murloc Paladin, as I had mentioned. But Priest banned away from both sides. They are different variations of Priest, with Ike bringing the Cloning Gallery Priest and ThunderUp bringing the Control Priest. But both these players have one thing in common, and that their lineup is aggressively themed. I would lump even Warlock into an aggressive strategy because it doesn't fit into anything else. And I can only keep track of 3 archetypes: control, combo, aggro, nothing else.
Well, thankfully for you, we have even fewer than that in the match. Then, kind of taking a look at the list on paper, there are some pitfalls that both players can end up falling into, and one of the ones I look at in particular is Ike's Odd Paladin. There are a number of cards on ThunderUp's side that can really keep this deck at bay, and the one deck that really struggles against it is going to be Odd Rogue. But you take that same principle and you apply it over to Ike's side. He's got Even Warlock. Even Warlock can struggle to Odd Rogue. And then, you take that Even Warlock back over to ThunderUp's side. It can struggle to the opposing Secret Hunter if it's able to contain the board in the right situation. There are so many ways that this can go that so much of it comes down to where the matchups actually land once they're in game.
And that's kind of what both these players said when we interviewed them earlier in the week. They're not overwhelming favorites in any of their matchups. And in fact, some of the matchups that they could face within this group, let alone within this tournament, are not very favored. And I was honestly surprised when, at the beginning of the day, 3 out of the 6 casters picked Ike as their prediction. He's a fantastic player. There's no doubt he's one of the best players out of the 16 here. It's just, will his lineup get there? And it's going to be tough in a field with a lot of different strategies and Odd Paladin falling prey, especially with the level up change that happened a while back. Can they cross the finish line? But we're going to start off with Ike playing the Hunter and ThunderUp with that Even Warlock.
Well, this is definitely one matchup I think that goes in the favor of Ike in terms of just the on-paper percentages. I do want to go back to your point of being surprised that so many players had picked Ike. Something that I've noticed about him ever since the first time I watched him play and the first time I spoke to him is that he's a player who goes against the grain. Even back to when players were playing Shutterwalk Shaman, he was using Shutterwalk Shaman, but he had Fungal Mancers and Giggling Inventors when it was at 5 mana, and his goal wasn't to Shutterwalk and end the game with a chain of infinite Shutterwalks. It was to Shutterwalk and end the game with Corpse Taker buffs and Fungal Mancers. Nonsense like that. It's just very much his style is to do things that other players don't think are super appealing, and Odd Paladin is no exception here. A lot of players did not find it appealing, obviously. He's the only one. But I think when Ike chooses a deck like that for a tournament this large, definitely something's up.
He had told us that I really tried hard in testing to make Thrall work, or Morgul, whichever one you'd like.
Yeah.
But he just couldn't find a good way to implement Shaman into a lineup. And the deck or the class struggling right now. Flametech Totem got changed for the long-term health of Shaman, so it's struggling. I don't doubt that he'll find a way to make it work in the future, but for this event specifically, he did not. But does have the Odd Paladin, which in itself is going against the grain, even though it's a deck we see on ladder all the time. In tournament play, not so much, because it just gets kind of hard targeted by a lot of things, even unintentionally. And Even Warlock is one of those decks that can do that, but it's got the Hunter to start off, and Hunter just is, it feels like no matter which matchup you play, you can see win conditions all over the place.
Yeah, and that's just largely because the cards are just so flexible in Hunter. You know, Dire Maul being a 1-mana 1/3, that's just an efficient card. The fact that it's a beast and you can play it alongside Master's Call and Kill Commands, very efficient card. The fact it gets buffed by Crackling Razor Maw and that it gets charged from Tundra Rhino. You know, you basically can apply that principle to almost the entirety of the deck. The cards are just all very flexible and work together well.
Amazing. Thunder Up, even Ike said he's a player that we don't know too much about. The first Turkish representative that we've had in the current HCT system. And, you know, we had a chance to talk with him. And, you know, it's just kind of a relaxed guy. And a fun story. TJ's fun fact, #1 of the series.
Fun story as opposed to a boring one.
Yeah, Thunder Up, a big NBA fan. And his favorite player is Kevin Durant. And Kevin Durant used to be on the Oklahoma City Thunder. So that's when he made his name.
Yep.
And up is the direction that he prefers to go in life.
I don't recall that part of the
No, he did. He said almost those words exactly. It was through an interpreter, but that's the gist that I got from it.
That was when Frodan promptly crushed his dreams and told him about a social media thing where Kevin Durant was responding to posts pretending to be someone else.
Yeah, and we also got word that Thunder Up is going to change his name to Golden State.
He said the Warriors are his favorite team, literally just because Kevin Durant's there.
Yeah. Fun fact, complete.
Ike's turn about to be complete here, too. This is about the longest I've ever seen Ike take on a turn.
Yeah, he even
The
said
stack with the hatchet.
He even said in the interview that we had with him right before this series that you guys saw that tends to play quick. He makes up his mind fast. Likes to keep up the pace.
Kind of surprised by this hatchet attack from Ike, but honestly, it makes a lot of sense here. If Thunderup doesn't have Shroom Brewer in this spot, he gets to attack through and just start, you know, hitting face. If Thunderup does have a heal for this little 2/4 taunt, Ike gets to punch through it and have a 4/2 challenging the Shroom Brewer on the other side. That one swing of the hatchet and a couple points of life buys him a lot of leverage on how Thunderup has to play his own turn.
Smart. Now, a couple options here. The one is just to make some value trades with Tundra Rhino. The problem with that one is his follow-up isn't great unless Thunder plays a big play. His other one is trying to squeeze value out of Unleash the Hounds, which I like because it's a card that you're not going to find great uses for later in the game. With a lot of big taunts coming down, if your opponent plays a Hooked Reaver, how is Unleash the Hounds going to be that valuable? So I like squeezing it in.
He also gets the to replace the weapon with a Candle Shot in this spot. And Candle Shot, a very surprisingly strong card versus Even Warlock in my time, because so often I feel like I'm like 1 damage off of killing an important minion, or I have a Hunter's Mark and I don't want to use my minion to kill whatever the target was. And just being able to have Candle Shot, not deal you 8 damage when you Hunter's Mark a Mountain Giant, honestly ends up being a pretty big deal.
Yeah.
And now Ike, with Spring Paw, not really the strongest draw in the deck, but the option of Tundra Rhino or of the Savannah Highmane both looking extremely appealing right now.
Yeah, Tundra Rhino, he's seen 2 Spellstone upgrades effectively with both Vocal Homunculus being played. So Tundra Rhino just kind of pushes 2 and threatens Savannah Highmane, but
forces action from your opponent.
It does, and that's a big thing. And if that's the case, then one of 2 things happens. Either you get to play Savannah Highmane on an empty board and your Tundra Rhino's getting taken care of, or he doesn't have the answer and you get to charge with the Savannah Highmane going to the next turn. But Ike is actually going to
This is smart too.
push 4.
The attack with the weapon here into the Shroom Brewer, it means that Hellfire won't clear up the Misha and leave the Shroom Brewer open to attack through onto the Savannah Highmane. Ike is actually really leveraging these small bits of damage in a very important and unique way in the deck. So often with Hunter, when I first started playing and I found myself just kind of jamming cards on board and attacking my opponent's face and just killing minions when I could kill them straight up. It took me a long time to recognize situations where I could leverage candle shots and hatchet damage and Dire Maul damage this way. And Thunder Up recognizing that it's super important to just be playing an ultimate amount of defense here and using the Doomsayer effectively as like an attempt to heal for 7.
Yeah.
And I think it's wise. I'm looking at Lich King on 8, and the rest of his hand basically not playing much defense. really tough matchup for ThunderUp, where if you don't have an early threat to try and counterattack your opponent, you are pretty much on defense the entirety of the game.
Which is a problem because you're life tapping consistently, and mid-range Hunter has no shortage of burst damage packed into the deck. So you can find yourself in very tough positions where you have to make suboptimal plays in the late game just to keep yourself alive, and that's where Blood River Gul'dan really comes into play. But then once Blood River Gul'dan comes into play, then Ike has the value generation of Deathstalker Rexar once he picks that up to kind of push him through those late stages of the game. So,
oh boy, that is a big pickup on Ike's side with that Timberwolf. Just gonna go ahead and play out the 2-1 here, and ThunderUp is got an answer to this with Defile and Hellfire.
but that's no development.
Yeah, that's the thing is, when you're answering a board, but you're just ceding the development right back over to your opponent, they just regain the initiative. Now, the initiative won't be quite as strong as I imagine as Ike's current board is, but it could be just as threatening. I'm looking at the pair of Tundra Rhinos in Ike's hand, and each one of those typically demands some sort of action from your opponent.
Yeah, ThunderUp still 2 Spellstones in the deck as well. But this turn just resigned to clearing off this board because he can't take another 6 from this Savannah Highmane, or he falls in range of those things we talked about.
Kill command.
Burst damage.
Why do you whisper it like that? Kill command. Honestly, Hunter has some of the scariest burst in the game because it's difficult to really get a read that the fact that the damage is there. You just kind of think about it, you're like, well, any of those cards in their hand could be kill command. They haven't played them yet. It's cards very often going to be reserved for burst damage effects. And like I said, Tundra Rhino here, pretty much just as scary as that Savannah Highmane if you're in ThunderUp spot.
Yep.
Ooh, with Sunfury Protector drawn, that's a really important draw for ThunderUp, and you can see that he immediately recognizes that he wants to Spellbreaker and use that Sunfury Protector he just drew to give his minions taunt. It's not the most efficient on board, but it may be enough to get the job done. And in ThunderUp spot, he absolutely, should not be trying to account for a second Tundra Rhino in this spot. That's a card that's just going to be difficult for him to defeat anyway.
Yeah.
Your magic shall not save.
I don't think we've checked this off the Caster Bingo card yet, but play to win. Don't play to not lose. Bingo.
It seems obvious when you say it. The point is, sometimes you need to be making aggressive plays rather than defensive plays in order to put pressure back onto your opponent.
Yeah.
If they think that you're trying to win, actually outright end the game at that point, rather than just, do something that's good and kind of stabilize the board, your opponent oftentimes will react differently as a result of it.
Oh, wait. Just looked at my bingo card. I'm missing a huge draw.
That's not one of them yet, so. I'm not quite convinced Sunfury Protector was the best draw in the deck at that point, but it was definitely really good. I came close to saying it, though. I came close to saying it. I typically reserve huge draw for the best draw in the deck. And only if it's important. A lot of parameters.
You don't just throw a huge draw around willy-nilly.
That's crazy talk.
So I'm going to use these Spring Paws to push a few more damage with the
Quite surprised
Tundra
by
Rhino.
this.
Well, he doesn't really have any other good use of his mana. I think that's the big case. There was some argument for Dire Frenzy, but it wouldn't have pushed any damage. It would have just given him a pretty good draw off the top with a 5/8 Tundra Rhino put into his deck, or 3 of them.
Well, that's not the worst thing in the world. It's just I think that Ike is really actively considering kill command with Dire Frenzy. If you shuffle 3 minions into the deck and then your opponent plays a Lich King, suddenly you're looking at that Tundra Rhino just running into a Lich King and dying. Kill command, on the other hand, outright wins the game. So just keeping your chance to draw it as high as possible, I think, is really important. And then also you still have the Tundra Rhino Dire Frenzy potentially next turn to follow up.
Great justification.
Hunter's Mark. Gonna take care of this Lich King, and that looks like that's gonna do it. Kind of funny, I'm just looking at the 2-mana Hunter's Mark and the Skulking Geist in ThunderUp's hand. There's just not really any way to get around that.
Yeah.
at that point. So Ike going to secure game 1. Pretty straightforward stuff. Thunder up just on the back foot. Doesn't have the Spellstone to recover. Ike's got a 1-0 lead.
Yeah, it was pretty likely that mid-range hunter from Ike was going to take a win throughout the series. It's just where the power level of the deck lies at the moment.
Yep.
But still a pretty big blow to Thunder Up, because going down 1-0 in a series, regardless of what deck you lost that first game to, can affect your mentality in a big event like this, especially for Thunder Up, who making his first appearance at a championship, his first big tournament appearance outside of the playoffs.
I mean, I think for Thunder Up, this isn't really anything to sweat about at all. I think that Ike's mid-range hunter is good against your entire lineup. I think that you're not going to necessarily expect it to get a win right off the bat, but I think it's a deck that you don't intend on defeating that many times in a row. And you know, I'm looking at like his Secret Hunter, his Odd Rogue here. You know, pretty much any way you sliced it, Ike was going to have a good shot with that deck, and the rest of your decks still service quite well versus Ike's Odd Paladin and even Warlock of himself. So for Thunder Up, I think this is just a normal circumstance that you very much expect to happen.
Yeah, well, one thing's for certain, still a lot of Hearthstone left to play in this series. Will Thunder Up be able to make the comeback, or will Ike close it out? Find out right after this.
Well played.
Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the HCT Winter Championship. Once again, I'm TJ, joined by the Admiral. That's Admirable.
Yo.
We're about to jump into game number 2 of Ike versus Thunder Up. Currently, Ike leads 1-0. Admirable, what are your thoughts?
I'm disappointed because you told me you were going to whisper when we came back, and then you just completely chickened out.
Yeah, I got to keep you on your toes. You never know
Oh,
what I'm
okay.
going to do. I'm a loose cannon.
Well, but now I'm not disappointed anymore. But, you know, I think it's pretty standard stuff in game number 1. You know, Thunder Up just going to, I think, likely, you know, I don't know what I'm doing.
Get out.
It's going to brush it off.
Brush it off, brush it off. Warlock Mirror coming up. Both of the even variety.
Yep. And as many people know at this point, if you've ever heard me talk about even Warlock, I am the world's foremost self-proclaimed even Warlock elitist.
I don't even know what that means.
It means that I consider myself an expert on this deck, and I often dislike a lot of what I see with it.
Yeah, I've also heard you many times say that you don't think the deck's in a great spot. You used more serious language than that, more intense language than what I just used, but that's the gist.
Yeah, I definitely don't think the deck is in a fantastic spot, but you know, during the player interviews, we did get a lot of insight into what they were thinking about as Thunder Up draws Doomsayer just a turn late, or just a card late, rather. A lot of them just had trouble choosing a fourth deck that they felt fit the lineup. And when you're playing any sort of aggression, you know, oftentimes, whoa, that is a huge draw. Oh my.
Yes!
Well, I mean, it
Bingo!
is. What do you want me to do? I don't control when they happen. Ike, though, with a very strong hand for the matchup. Already has both Spellstones. 2 of the most important cards that aren't Mountain Giants. Has a Mountain Giant of his own, and even has like the Vulgar Homunculus here, providing as a blocker against the first Mountain Giant. That is such an important measure in the matchup, because the way the game ends very quickly is a player gets Mountain Giant and hits the face. Like, that is the disaster scenario for defending even Warlock player.
Yeah, but Ike looking at this Mountain Giant, the downside of it is that, yes, if you did not have the Vulgar Homunculus, you would take 8 damage. But if he plays this Mountain Giant, Thunder Up's Mountain Giant is likely to 2 for 1.
Well, I think that Ike should not be risking the Doomsayer for the sole reason of Spellbreaker. But that Doomsayer could be an important draw as well. You know, very often in the matchup, what ends up happening is big minions crash into each other, and then late game development is the king of the matchup. It's who gets the first giant threat down. Doomsayer helps you control that notion a lot. Like in this spot, I actually would not be surprised to see Thunder Up play his own Doomsayer. I also wouldn't be surprised to see him play his own Twilight Drake.
Yeah, he's got initiative right now where Ike's the one who's kind of forced into the position where he has to make trades. So yes, Doomsayer will allow him to play a minion on an empty board, most likely. I think that keeping that initiative is more important, and might be able to find a spot down the line where Doomsayer could be impactful in a bigger way, where he falls behind on board, and Doomsayer is what allows him to retake it.
Yeah, and I've seen a lot of debate about you know, almost this exact turn that happens here. I think Ike is going to have to trade Mountain Giants in this spot, and it is ugly to look at, and I hate to see it. I think the reason to not trade Mountain Giants would be somewhere mixed with both Spellstones, but if you're seeing this Doomsayer get reached for right now, he's going to tap, he's going to attack that Mountain Giant, he's going to hope that he has something good to add to the board. It's not another Doomsayer, so 3-2 is going to have to be good enough. And Spellbreaker drawn for Thunder Up right away. Had Hellfire in hand, so you know you're looking at kind of the same effect, but the difference is this actually develops the board.
And Hellfire is great for pushing through later on in the game. Also, no Spellstone in hand. Hellfire is a great way to activate that.
Yeah, and Thunder Up should to some degree be defending this 4-3. Whether that's going to be a trade or whether it's going to play a Sunfury Protector or the Vulgar Homunculus, he has to protect this 4-3 in some capacity. And perhaps you even take that a bit further. I don't mind this either. You know, this is one of my big considerations on the play simply because your opponent's at 18. If you drop them to that 15 mark, Hooked Reavers are they're going to be quite troublesome to push through.
Yeah, but honestly, I guess so, because you'd put him down to below 15, so he didn't have to tap, because he had a full hand with the draw on the play.
Yep.
But
and Ike needs to make a consideration here about, you know, what to taunt up and why. Honestly, I think there is some merit to not taunting up the Twilight Drake, and I think there's some merit to not taunting up the Doomsayer as well. And specifically, the reason is the Bone Mare in Ike's hand, giving a minion +4/+4 and taunt. You know, a 0/7 Doomsayer is often never going to get attacked if it's silenced.
often I would say never, unless you're playing against Combo Priest.
Yeah, it's quite rare that it ends up happening. You have to have a pretty unique circumstance to justify it.
Yep.
And so in this spot, Thunder Up, you know, we're looking at one turn away from being able to, you know, reasonably play a Doomsayer, I'd say.
Mm-hmm.
You want to play Doomsayer heading into 8 mana turns with Thunder Up, or you want to be playing Doomsayers to counteract your opponent's ability to get Mountain Giant down first. So this one's probably just the one.
Yeah, Skulking is such an interesting tech card for this tournament. It gives you an idea of what Thunder Up was expecting from the get-go. Skulking Geist kind of unintentionally got nerfed because of the change to Hunter's Mark. I think is a big one, with Hunter being the most popular class and Hunter's Mark being a popular inclusion. But the main deck that I think that Skulking Geist has value against is the Death Rattle Hunter.
Whoa, that attack is quite weird to me.
Why? Because it activates Hooked Reaver?
Yeah, because Ike's on a 7-mana turn, so Life Tap is a very natural thing to have happen this turn.
I think Mountain Giant changes the play, and I think he can go Hooked Reaver next turn.
Yeah, I mean, I would definitely look at Mountain Giant Sunfury Protector to be the play this turn, and then, I mean, Mountain Giant Sunfury... You know, I didn't say it, but that's a huge draw. It's the most important card in the deck, typically. And
It kind of seems like you feel shame now for saying huge draw.
well, I'm more ashamed that I didn't catch it at this point. I wasn't even thinking about Mountain Giant.
That feeling when the player you're casting has a huge draw, but you don't say huge draw. I can see the pain in your face.
And the 2/3 attack is actually quite interesting as well. I could actually see this going into Skulking Geist if Ike's going to end up taunting up this Twilight Drake and the Mountain Giant. I could also see the Sunfury Protector just blocking with one of the taunt effects. A silence onto the Twilight Drake would be, you know, massively brutal. A silence onto the Mountain Giant here, not the worst thing in the world.
Yeah. It is 2 Spellbreakers in Thunder Up's even Warlock deck, so he has played one. Obviously, you can see it on board. But the second one is something that has to be in Ike's mind. Even Warlock is one of those decks where, because they draw so many cards with the 1-mana life tap,
Yeah,
oftentimes those fringe play-arounds are something that you actually reasonably have to think about.
kind of a weird turn here from Thunder Up, but I do believe Doomsayer should be hitting the board in some capacity here.
Shields up.
Yeah, the sole reason that I dislike this is because your opponent has 8 mana. They get to develop on their 8 mana turn rather than just having to fight defensively. I think either way, though, with that Spellbreaker draw, which is another huge draw, by the way, Ike is in a fantastic spot to be able to take over this game. I'm going to struggle to see Thunder Up getting back into this one.
Yeah, also making those value trades instead of pushing face to force Thunder Up to activate his own Hooked Reaver.
Ah, I lied. I lied a lot. I didn't see the Hellfire Defile cleared this so as quickly as Thunder Up did. He spotted that instantaneously and actually lands a Doomsayer in about the exact same spot. Oh, Ike draws his own Doomsayer. So now Ike gets to Spellstone back and play his own Doomsayer to strip the play away from Thunder Up. Another huge draw.
Thunder Up, though, does have the advantage of Blood River Gul'dan in hand. Whereas
Ike's
Ike
going to
is-
have the advantage of 11 attack on board next turn.
That's true, but wouldn't it be so juicy if you could just play Blood River Gul'dan on that turn 10 after you picked up that Doomsayer off the top?
I'm thinking that Thunder Up might need to just throw the Hooked Reaver into the pool and hope that it getting rezzed by Blood River Gul'dan is a real play. And you have to think about the life tap too here as well. Is Ike going to be able to play his own stuff that matters? And now that I see Lich King drawn, I absolutely would be throwing this Hooked Reaver down.
Yeah.
And I'm probably throwing down the Plated Beetle as well. The only reason I don't want to do that is because of the Bone Mare in hand.
Also could help activate Second Defile. That's one thing.
Yeah.
But throwing Hooked Reaver in, if you look at your next couple turns, it's Blood River Gul'dan
goodness.
into Lich King. You're going to be floating above that 15th health mark likely because you're going to be
You don't
using
often
the
get
Blood
these.
River Gul'dan hero power.
You don't often get these late games with even Warlock. A lot of times, it ends in a blowout. But when you get them, my goodness, just the draws are so impactful. Ike draws his own Blood River Gul'dan. TJ,
What is it, Admirable?
the whole draw is huge. The entirety of it, like all of them, collectively, it's one big huge with like 7 U's in it, in all caps.
I don't think he's going to play it.
I don't think he's going to play it this turn either, but it's very important.
Yeah. He can play big stuff here, then follow that up with the Blood River Gul'dan, especially if he's able to get Hooked Reaver in the pool.
This is probably too much from Thunder Up to come back from.
Well, he's got some big stuff himself.
Yeah, but
I mean, this is pretty even, and Ike's hitting fatigue first at this stage in the game.
Ike has got lethal next turn through a taunt.
Well, if
This
he
is-
plays Blood River Gul'dan, he brings back 2 Vulgar Homunculi.
This is one of the reasons I think that the Plated Beetle should have been thrown out last turn for 3 extra health, and the Hooked Reaver should be down. The Blood Reaver Gul'dan would be so much easier in this spot, as Thunder Up would be at 16 effective health, be going up to 21, and getting 8 attack on his own board. And now instead, you're going up to 18 effective health, and you get 4 attack on your own board.
Oh, he
Oh, he only has the
Vulgar
one.
Homunculus. Where'd the second one go? I could have sworn he played it.
It was Ike that played 2,
Okay.
wasn't it?
No, I don't think so.
How? I don't know. Yeah, well, he had to play 2 because he drew the second Spellstone later, and
Yeah,
that
yeah,
one's
okay,
buffed.
okay.
Yeah.
I wonder.
But now for Ike, it's a matter of invest into Blood River Gul'dan or make the most powerful board possible.
Or tap and try to get a lethal out. Is there one?
No.
I wonder.
Yeah, big board.
Yeah. Most powerful board possible.
Yikes.
Push 11. Play Lich King, you die. Play Hooked Reaver, dead.
I think all of these might end in dead.
Shroomburr, dead. Shroomburr Spellstone, you heal for 10, go up to 17.
Not technically dead, but dead.
And there's 15 on the board? No, dead.
Well, you'd be able to take the Bone Mare off the board.
Yeah, so there'd be 15 left on the board, plus Hellfire,
yeah.
18.
He's
Dead.
pretty dead.
Pointed Beetle, Bone Mare? Question mark? Dead.
Dead? Dead. I like the way ThunderUp played this game, but Ike got so many important mid-game cards. And the only turn I didn't like from ThunderUp was the preparation for Blood Reaver Gul'dan. It was a little less than he needed, and it made his turn just too weak.
Yep. Very well played by Ike, though.
I don't think that ThunderUp gets out of that game if he plays those 2 cards, but I definitely think he's in a more comfortable position.
Yeah, definitely agreed. But 2-0 now for Ike.
And that to me is one of the very important wins in Ike's lineup, is that one. Again, the Odd Paladin is still here, and it can't get swept, but even if you're at like 30% to win each game across your opponent's side of the board, you're actually still a technical favorite to win the match at that point.
Yeah.
So Ike's got the maximum chance to win with his worst deck, but it is still, I think, his worst deck in the matchup.
I will have to agree with you, Odd Paladin. I think there's a reason why a lot of players chose not to bring it, but Ike put a lot of faith in the deck. Big question is, will he be able to take a win with it and close out this series? Or will ThunderUp be able to complete the first reverse sweep of the tournament? We're going to find out, but for now, we got to go to a break. Don't go anywhere. More huge draws right after this. A little more than halfway through the day today, currently on match number 6 out of the 8 initial matches across the 4 groups on day 1 of 4. I currently leads 2-0 in the series. Got Odd Paladin left to find a win with. Could be tough going up against ThunderUp's lineup, but 3 chances is a lot.
Now, I've been setting it up as though this is Ike's worst deck, but there is a caveat to it. It's that ThunderUp has Odd Rogue, which I think is pretty decent against what Ike's brought, but not so much against Odd Paladin. It's, in fact, I would call it one of the worst decks against Odd Paladin.
Yeah, and
in the game.
And that point is very relevant because this next matchup is Odd Paladin versus Even Warlock.
Yeah, and you may notice it looked to me like Ike kept Fungalmancer in his opening hand. When this deck lost level up, it needed a way to try and get damage in a very different way. And it actually came in the form of Frostwolf Warlord. A lot of those got added in the slot where level up was because you just needed a payoff to having multiple minions on board. Fungalmancer very much, fills that role in just a better way because the damage is so immediate. But I think that the 5-cost buffs in matchups like Even Warlock, where your opponent's going to be a bit slower to actually pressure you, are super important to be keeping if you have a 1-drop available to you. And they're a bit more important on the coin as well because you get the turn 4 spike. But that's a card that is just going to be absolutely one of the ways that Ike wins the matchup. The second way he's going to be able to win the matchup is ThunderUp just never has a board clear.
Yeah. Defile, Hellfire, and those board clears are very important to the point where every time you use one, you have to think to yourself, is this 100% necessary? Especially if you have limited amount in your hand. So you only have a Hellfire and Defile. You have to be very conservative with those resources because now this could be a really tough point to understand, but once you use them, they're gone.
Whoa.
Yeah. Something that I think a lot of players don't realize when playing Hearthstone. But I think it's an important facet of the game.
Let me think.
There's not a single person who doesn't understand that when you use a consumable thing, it is then gone.
I had to throw it out there.
Reporting for duty.
Vulgar Monkus is a great way to stave off that early damage.
That's an important one, too.
Yeah. And this is one of the problems with Ike keeping the Fulgomancer, because yes, you're always going to have minion generation. Fulgomancer is very often going to have targets that you can use the Fulgomancer on going into turn 5.
Yeah, I was going to think maybe you forgot that the button makes 2 minions a turn.
Ah, yes.
That's the entire point of playing the deck.
Once you use the button, it's not gone. It keeps coming back every turn.
Yeah. Now the problem is that
Renewable energy.
that ThunderUp has had 2 minions to fight early on and has Twilight Drake in this spot. That does spell trouble for Ike, where I don't necessarily think he has the liberty of playing Fungalmancer in this spot. And that looks like the Taunt Maul,
Yep.
if I recall that picture correctly, which I do because that's the only one I ever see.
Sometimes it's good.
Yeah, that's never. That sometime is always when it doesn't.
Okay. That sentence just got me all jumbled up.
Frostwolf Warlord, no Spellbreaker. And that means a payoff for Ike. That's a scary minion. And so ThunderUp has to take this quite ugly looking route of just trade the Twilight Drake and Hellfire and then hope that Dread Infernal is going to be enough to keep Ike at bay for a number of turns, which it's looking like it might be able to.
Yeah, and this is a crucial turn for Ike, trying to find a balance and, you know, what could ThunderUp have? He knows that there's a copy of Dread Infernal in the deck. Does he play into it, thinking it's a one-of? It's likely that it doesn't have it.
Yeah, this is a pretty interesting turn to me from Ike, where I didn't expect that. Okay, so I'm going to... wow, this is really interesting to me.
I think this is smart. It's playing around Dread Infernal. To the max.
Yeah.
Oftentimes, you know, when you're trying to coach someone who's playing Odd Paladin for the first time, you say you just got to press the button every turn. Press it. It's free minions. It's free value. We have to think, what gives me the strongest board position against my opponent's strongest play? And this is that. At this point, he figures I can unleash the Board Ripper, because if my opponent plays Doomsayer, 1, I have an answer to it already with this move. And 2, by the time my opponent were able to play a Doomsayer later in the game, either I already won or already lost.
Makes sense. So question 2 for Ike. So how do you play around all the other stuff? And that other stuff is, you know, namely Hooked Reaver at this point.
I think we're going in.
Yep. I told you there's 2 things that you get with Ike. Number 1, he's going to ask himself, do I need to kill that minion so it's dead? If no, then hit face so they have less life. And honestly, on turn 5, I shouldn't be surprised when I think about his other thing, is you want to play your minion so that it's in play.
And there's a not often talked about number 4, play your resources so they're gone.
I'm pretty sure you made that one up.
No, he told me right before we went on.
Sun Fury Protector for ThunderUp is going to do a heap of work here.
Yeah, but a lot of damage staring back. If he doesn't clear multiple units off this board, which he can't, he could reduce somewhat Spellbreakers and the Argent Squire. But Raid Leader is going to be a good amount of value and doesn't have a lot of health to work with. Got a couple of really impactful turns coming up. If you can land a Bone Bear, fantastic. If you can stave off enough to get the Blood River Gul'dan, fantastic.
Well, the Hooked Reaver also a pretty big one.
Yep.
Just a lot of time that Ike buys here. That damage should absolutely be shipped face.
Well, it reduces the damage of Raid Leader, and I don't know the breakpoints. At that point, I think you have to calculate the breakpoints. If that 1 extra attack from Raid Leader onto the Void Ripper would allow Ike to push through something that he otherwise wouldn't be able to push through, then the trade is good.
So maximum damage would be like Raid Leader, Blessing a Might. We'll call that a reasonable amount of burst damage.
Yeah.
If that were to take place,
it would just be 1 extra damage, right? Because the Blessing Might wouldn't matter because it would have a target anyway. So it's only about breakpoints.
yeah, it does. I don't think it matters. I'm trying to find a spot where it matters.
Well, maybe ThunderUp just didn't have enough time to calculate whether or not the breakpoint was there, and the safe play for him is to trade.
Well, that damage should have been shipped face.
Okay.
You have to counter attack as well. That's the thing in the matchup.
And breakpoint would not have mattered because he had clean trade, so it would have been just one overkill on whichever one of these minions it was.
Yeah,
So
the difference is that
damage
Ike would
should have been shipped face.
Yeah, Ike would be at 15 instead. You know,
Yeah.
a Bone Mare suddenly looks like an extremely scary play in that spot.
Yes.
So
Your magic shall not save.
Spellbreaker, take the trade. Still a bit off. Can put him to 2. But have no way whatsoever to close out the game. We talked about Ike's deck list a little bit, but nothing fancy like a Witch's Cauldron in the deck. Opted to go with the Void Ripper instead, which I think was a smart choice. If you look at all the lineups, good amount of Doomsayers, and it also has just a good amount of utility. You know, in a vacuum, not knowing everybody else's deck list, I think a lot of players may have been expecting a little bit of Wall Priest, which Void Ripper has added utility in to be able to get through those big high health taunts. Doomsayers and even Warlock.
Also just flips around your corridor creepers and your Stonehills sometimes.
Yeah, and can allow you to push some additional damage. Even just Firefly on turn 2, flip them. They're 2/1s. You push 2 extra damage.
It's just
Potentially more.
It's just a very unique effect.
It is, but so is Witch's Cauldron.
Yeah, well, but what just called kind of, you know, it's not the greatest. You get Shaman cards. I don't know if you heard, there were 0 Shamans in this tournament.
Love Shaman cards.
I could have set him to 2.
I think this is honestly his best play. The other thing he would have done would be to make a small board and buff it with Fungomancer, but he's hoping that Thunderup has no heal, has no taunt, and that he's going to draw a weapon off the top. That's his game plan right now.
Yeah, and that's going to fail. Well, of course, we can see Thunderup's hand, but I do agree that this was Ike's strongest method to win the game. He's not going to get there, as I don't think there's actually any other card in the deck that delivers the damage outside of Weapon. And the Weapon's going to be shut down this turn. It's the only charge minion in the deck, so Thunderup is free to play this pretty much how he needs to. Taunt and heal are, pretty effectively the same thing. The difference is that the taunt shuts down the weapon damage as well and just puts more stats on board.
Yep.
Perhaps we spoke too soon.
Well,
Oh, it's not Sunkeeper Tarim. There's a Moshog Enforcer.
reporting
doesn't
for duty.
even gain the benefit. I think that's lethal. Hellfire,
Well,
put-
you're at 2.
Oh, you can't Hellfire. That's right. It's not lethal. He can make a tie here. That's the worst play.
Dread Infernal, I think, is actually the strongest play.
Yeah, he's got it.
You're totally safe with this.
It would be lethal if he was at higher than 4, because he could trade over the Spellbreaker, Hellfire, Dread Infernal. Unfortunately, does not have the health to work with. Thank you for putting that out for me, Apple.
I was tempted to let you just sound like a bumbling Raven.
You should have.
But Raven's been doing good lately. I can't really, put him down to your level here, I guess.
He's making it harder to make fun of him.
Thunderup puts a point on the board in a tight-looking game, which Thunderup is pretty much expected to be a much bigger favorite. If he had drawn Doomsayer as his early board clear, I think Ike actually might have run away with this game because of the Void Ripper.
Yeah.
So, Thunderup dodges the one very dangerous way that his deck attempts to reestablish board position, and with an early Vulgar Homunculus, early Plated Beetle able to stabilize.
Still a rough rest of the match for Thunderup because of that pivotal matchup that we've been talking about, which is the Odd Rogue. That's the deck that he has that's the weakest against that Odd Paladin. So, an uphill battle any which way you slice it, even when 2 favorables against Odd Paladin. Just because sometimes Odd Paladin can sneak through wins. I mean, that's, kind of the iconic feature of a good rank play deck is just that against every matchup, you have game. Yeah, and that's why mid-range Hunter, that's why Odd Paladin are so popular in ladder.
A lot of players don't like to bring Odd Paladin with this fear that, it's a deck that can get swept. in this tournament. And, well, yeah, every deck's a deck that can get swept. Every deck has a chance to lose. You feel oftentimes that you're out of control of the situation when you're losing certain matchups with Odd Paladin, and I just don't think that's that big a deal.
Yeah.
If it's a strong deck, it's a strong deck.
Yeah, but we'll see how strong of a deck it is. We're going to go to a quick break. When we come back, potentially the conclusion of this series between Ike and ThunderUp. Don't go anywhere. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the Winter Championship of the HCT variety. My name is TJ, and I'm joined by the Admiral. That's Admirable.
Yep.
Once again, and this series is starting to heat up a little bit with ThunderUp putting a point on the board, getting that win with Warlock, trying to sweep the Odd Paladin, which is a difficult task.
Yeah, and taking a look at his Secret Hunter deck, which is kind of in my head what I imagine he would end up going with here. It's the better of the two. He went with his best one, in my opinion, in the last game. There are some really key things to look at in this one, which, number one, Secret Hunter, ever since Springpaw got introduced, you had a little bit extra way to start checking board positions and really make something of it. But there is no Unleash the Hound in the deck. And that is a really big talking point, because that's, to me, one of the premier tools that helps fight against Odd Paladin is having access to Unleash the Hounds.
Yeah. I will agree with you. And you kind of think, well, you're not sacrificing too much by going with the secret package. And honestly, the secret package does pretty well against aggressive decks because secrets are hard to navigate around. Your opponent has to really think through them. They provide a lot of disruption. And then you have the counter attack with, I play my Spellstone and push a lot of damage the following turn. So I do like this matchup specifically against Odd Paladin. But I think it's about even when you consider against Midrange Hunter because of the Unleash the Hounds. It's just how the decks are built, right? But I think he's still in a good spot.
I'm not interested in using Animal Companion this turn. I don't blame him.
Candle Shot's really that important early game engine, right?
And it's so much better when you're going second than when you're going first in the matchup. Just being able to respond instantaneously is such a big deal. I can compare it to like when you're going first as the hunter, you want Dire Maul. When you're going second, you want Candle Shot. Now, whenever I'm playing, I want both of them versus Odd Paladin. But if I had to pick which one I wanted, that would be the order of priority. Dire Maul going first, Candle Shot going second. Of course, I'm probably going to get crucified by some of my chats for this, my practice groups and stuff. They're going to be like, no, you pretty much always want Dire Maul.
Yeah, Dire Maul's pretty darn good. Ike here having to make a decision between just playing hero power and basically losing all control of the board, but banking that Corridor Creeper to be able to play for a big swing turn later, or just playing it out now.
I'm quite surprised by the Corridor Creeper. It is more stats in play, and that's, again, just part of the Ike effect. If it's a bigger thing, he's very likely to do it.
To my side.
Misha, real good here.
This does allow you to Void Ripper the Corridor Creeper and hit the button next turn. It's actually, I think it is better when I think about it. I didn't account for just how Misha ended up lining up. My head was so focused on having Blessing of Might be one of my answers to Animal Companion via one of my tokens. And I was like, wow, maybe you just don't get that turn. But now you kind of get it, and you get used to the Void Ripper alongside of it. But he's still going to use the Void Ripper and the Blessing of Might because that's more stuff in play.
Yeah, it also flips this Corridor Creeper to a 1/5, which keeps it around on board to try and fight. Also makes it more likely that Ike has 2 minions on board next turn to be able to play the Fungomancer.
This is such an interesting game to me because I would not have done this line of play at all. And honestly, I'd venture to say most players would not have done this.
Yeah, I would agree with you. But the one thing about Secret Hunter is that it has a tiny bit more inevitability attached to it. Spellstone is an instant large board. Zul'jin is also pretty much an instant large board, plus a lot of disruption because you get to replay your secrets that you've played this game, and removal spells if you've played those. So compare that to Midrange Hunter, which, yes, it has Deathstalker Rexar. Secret Hunter still has Deathstalker Rexar.
A little surprised by the Master's Call. I think I would have liked to see the Crackling Razor Maw and Kill Command try to answer this board state. But if you're able to get Crackling Razor Maul to even answer one of these, I think it works out in your benefit.
Yeah, would agree. Well, ThunderUp does have to worry more about falling behind on board.
Yes, and I actually think that the fact that Ike has drawn Vine Cleaver gives a very clear path for Ike on what he wants to do now, where he gets to trade off the Crackling Razor Maul. He's got Fungal Mancer for next turn, and Vine Cleaver to follow that up. I actually think that this just went from a pretty good spot for ThunderUp to a really bad spot for ThunderUp.
Yeah, one of the things that Midrange Hunter does have going for it is that it does have emergency tools against Odd Paladin, where at some point you could play Unleash the Hounds with Timberwolf or Spring Paw with Timberwolf to be able to chew through a board that's otherwise tough. Whereas Secret Hunter, they're much more setup oriented. They don't have Timberwolf. They don't have Unleash the Hounds. So once you fall behind on board, that's pretty much it. You have to play reactive with a deck that's not as reactive, and that can be a problem. So I would have also liked to play more for the board and more tempo oriented than resource generation oriented like he did with the Master's Call. It does, however, kind of increase his average draw for secrets and removal.
Yeah, I don't necessarily think you need an average draw in that spot, though.
You need control of the board, I agree.
Yeah, you need like a stranglehold on it, because that's how you lose the game, is your opponent gets to land a Vine Cleaver while they're ahead. And not only that, Ike's also got Leroy. Like Ike has drawn the damage this game, and now it's up to ThunderUp to be able to answer the damage. And I can see it happening, but I'm not convinced just yet. Try to hide the Crackling, I'm sorry, the Scavenging Hyena. Hide it with the Crackling Razor Maul, perhaps give it extra health.
Divine Shield also pretty reasonable. He's at a good life total to the point where he doesn't have to worry about this damage shipped to the face.
This is where I think it gets dangerous, though, is Ike has a lot of different directions to go with this one. My instinct is just, crack it with the Vine Cleaver and keep moving forward. But I'm looking at Stonehill, I'm looking at Righteous Protector. There's a lot of opportunity to just protect things.
Yeah, and both Spring Paws are gone. Has used both of those. So there's no way to instantly generate Beast to trade in to buff up the Scavenging Hyena.
Yeah, I mean, right now you're looking at Deathstalker Rexar, potentially being the most impactful card to the game right now.
Yeah, I would also say maybe Subject 9.
Yeah.
Just because it thins the deck of the secrets to increase your average draw, and it also beefs up the Spellstone that's in your hand. So
that tells me Ike is very focused on damage at this point. And Dread Corsair, not too shabby with a Vine Cleaver in hand.
Yeah, very good with a Vine Cleaver in hand. Huge amounts of tempo.
Reporting for duty.
Mike says, have a buff Beast. You got 3 taunts to go through.
I feel like I'm feeding a fed horse here right now, but you are just seeing so many reasons why players choose the mid-range version of Hunter over Secret Hunter. Going with a hybrid deck like this just makes your synergies feel so off. Having a dead card in the far left of ThunderUp's hand has been so detrimental, and he has to make weak turns like this one, where he's barely making any development, not pushing any damage, and giving Ike effectively full initiative, which it feels like he's had all game.
Blood and plunder.
And now the moment of truth. That seems responsible.
I don't know why that's a very responsible decision.
Well, I was looking at it, I was like, hey, if you just go full YOLO here, your opponent is taking a lot of damage in that spot, but it just seems a bit irresponsible. It's an 8/5 Scavenging Hyena. Like, just get rid of it.
Just call it a day. Don't get too fancy.
I wonder.
Did cost him some damage, though.
Yeah.
I think that one of the big factors for it was that the Dread Corsair is immediately challenging the Scavenging Hyena, so there's not another value trade on board for Thunder Up.
Hey, Nathan.
Hey, TJ.
Would you like to count with me?
No.
Okay, I'll do it myself. Should be about 14 damage on board.
Excellent work.
Oh, nope, just kidding.
Job's done.
Yeah, he made the trade into the Righteous Protector. So now there's 16 damage on board. Add a Bless 'em all to that.
That's the +1 attack one.
That's 21 damage. Now I bet you wish you were counting with me. That got exciting. 4 from the Vine Cleaver, 6 on board, that's 10. Leroy, 16. Re-equip the Blessed Maul with 5 minions on board that can attack this turn, 21.
Is that too irresponsible, though? You have to think about how the draws from Thunder Up's deck are going to affect things. You know, Thunder Up right now has been scraping to try and stay alive at this point. And there are a lot of cards left in the deck that do not help him stay alive. But I think if Ike ignores too much of this board, the game can slip away.
Must move quickly.
But if you let the Hunter live too long, things can also start slipping away. A Deathstalker or Rexar drawn could be a big deal. Then Thunder Up starts banking on those zombies and has the potential to start blowing out the game with big taunts, with lifesteal minions, with rush. But Ike basically just going to set up the biggest board possible after trading into some of the dangerous minions and say, deal with this.
Oh, boy. Oh, boy.
I think I don't know.
You think what? This works.
This does work, yeah. This works. I agree.
This is great. That was a huge draw from Thunder Up.
Yeah. Also, Subject 9 going into the Zul'jin turn, he's going to have a Spellstone. He's going to have multiple secrets that were played. He's played an Animal Companion. He's played a Kill Command. He's played a Master's Call.
The question for me now is, can Ike actually contain the board position and get back to a winning spot?
Yeah.
He's not, you know, going face is pretty out of the question in this spot unless he draws exactly Purifier's Maul. Because that would give the minions Divine Shield.
Yeah.
But even in that spot, the Zul'jin will reload the Explosive Trap. And that's not a very good draw right now.
Oh, man. Would this situation have been different if I just shipped everything upstairs last turn? Sometimes it's okay to do the irresponsible thing.
Yeah, it's true. I mean, there is a certain recklessness to be had with Hearthstone play and it paying off. But I think Ike is, I think he just got outdone in this game. I don't necessarily think he's getting there. And the Zul'jin is why.
Divine Favor maybe could change things, but I don't think so because Thunder Up's going to make a pretty big board on this turn with the Zul'jin, plus have the backup of Explosive plus Wandering Monster played on the board.
Now, Ike does have the board, at least, checked. The board from Thunder Up, you know, it's going to take a big hit here.
But Thunder Up's also going to draw more cards from his deck because he's played a Master's Call this game.
That's the two you know about. Takes out a minion.
You can also play a Dire Maul with the extra coin. Oh, he only had 1 beast left. It's Secret Hunter. He's drawing all his beasts.
Yeah, this is still a winnable game for Ike, but he's going to need some draws. TJ frantically looking at the list. He's like, how could that be possible?
Job's done.
Just starting to think when he played a Tundra Run. I don't know.
I don't really remember that either, actually.
I wonder. Reporting
Also,
for duty.
Warlord gets picked up as well. That honestly might be the best draw on the deck.
Stand ready.
Divine Favor into that might have been a little bit better. It's pretty good either way you slice it.
Yeah. Ike still got a little bit of game left. Like I said, Divine Favor could change things. Stonehill Defender could be a big value generation.
No Hunter's Mark in the deck.
Rexar.
Rexar's pretty good.
It also lets him isolate the Frost with Warlord for this freezing
Yeah,
trap.
that is also a huge draw.
Yeah. Now you give up the Zul'jin hero power, but
Oh no,
yeah,
not that. That's the
cares?
reason I play Zul'jin. So that way I can hit anything with my hero power, not just them. For you old school players out there, remember Steam Weedle Sniper and how he never played it?
Now you can have it all the time. I mean, it was pretty likely at this point that Thunder Up would pick up Deathstalker Rex. There's only 6 cards left in the deck. Subject 9 plus playing 2 Master's Call, getting all those secrets, all those beasts out of the deck.
That's a lifesteal,
Leads into this
life drinker, I
situation.
believe, as well.
Yep.
Yep, and
Gains
that's
double lifesteal because of the effect plus the damage. So you get 6 immediately, plus if it attacks,
Wow.
you get a bunch more.
Check for snipe. You know it's explosive, but you know it's freezing as well. And you know there's a wandering. You just gotta hope to get it done. But it's not enough. Thunder Up. My goodness, this was such a close-looking game. It just fights tooth and claw and lets Zul'jin do the heavy lifting at the end of it. Oh, that's right. The freezing trap doesn't even activate because the Leroy died the explosive trap.
Died of the explosive trap, that's right. Thunder Up ties it up 2-2, which means we're going to a game number 5. The second of the day. Start off with 3 3-0s. Kind of glad we're getting some drama here towards the end of the day.
That's what I like.
Drama.
Drama.
Yeah. It all comes down to that matchup that we've been alluding to basically for the last hour and a half. Odd Rogue versus Odd Paladin. 2 decks that, boy, in their heyday, they were a force to be reckoned with. Now, still really good. Just not quite at the power level that they were before the Cold Blood change and before the level up change.
Yeah, apparently if you just double certain classes' hero powers, they get pretty good.
Yeah. Apparently if you make them cheaper, they also get pretty good.
Yeah, it's like a form of doubling.
That's true. You double it backwards.
With honor.
Yeah,
Watch
half.
your
That's what that
back.
means. All right, let's just get right into it.
yes, indeed.
Screw breaks. Let's play some Hearthstone.
Wow, both hands looking quite good. Thunder Up has the luxury of Dire Maul, and Ike has the luxury of Divine Shield minions. Now, Thunder Up's, the pickups from the Mulligan, bit of yikes there, but
Not the best, and we were talking about this during one of the breaks. Thunder Up's Odd Rogue list is quite interesting and quite heavy. He's got a Plague Scientist in the deck to try and better get through big taunt minions and matchups that's necessary, and creates Chemist to kind of fill the hole that Cold Blood being 2 mana left.
yeah,
And those cards are just not going to really have much benefit in this matchup outside of fringe scenarios. He does have a pair of Tar Creepers, which I think are kind of necessary to get through this early game, but the 2 damage dagger is effectively useless. You may as well just be a normal non-Odd Rogue in this matchup because oftentimes you're just overkilling for 1 every time.
yeah. The matchup is very much about taking the board and then taking advantage of it. Thunder Up is answering 1 extra thing at a time with the hero power, and Ike's making 2 extra things at a time with his hero power. So you can figure out the math quite easily on that one. You know, they kind of touch on the tech cards from Thunder Up. I don't quite understand them, and I think that they're, you know, pretty weak choices given all the options available. And Ike, as he draws Divine Favor, I think he's eyeing how can I take advantage of this Divine Favor, but that will give up board if you do that. So I am curious about this play from Ike. You know, I have often criticized when players make this type of play and wonder to myself, why didn't you just hit the button? And then Divine Favor is the exact reason why, but you cede a lot of tempo to your opponent by doing it this way.
Yeah, but you also gain a lot more resources. Not picking up the best cards, though. Really heavy stuff. And
Gets him out of the way, though.
It does. That's true.
Oh, SI7 agent gets drawn for Thunder Up, and now you're looking at a circumstance where Thunder Up, can potentially just buy value back on the other side. I don't know if this is the turn necessarily to do it. I would like to see a dagger up.
He's got 3 5-drops in hand.
Yeah, I wanted to see a
And not
dagger
a
up
turn
that
4
turn.
play.
I really wanted to see a dagger up that turn. Argent Squire, attack a minion, dagger up.
He's really valuing immediate board presence
Well,
over thinking for the long term and having a play in.
he still can get paid off from this, though. We got an extra minion in play, and now he can just dagger up next turn with no play left to be had, and then use the Snapdraw Shell Fighter to really reinforce that board position.
Now, Fledgling drawn, which is a playable card, and he can protect it on board by making 2 trades, but doesn't get the dagger up.
I want the dagger. Dagger's 2 mana, kill 2 things over 2 turns.
So many options.
Vicious Fledgling is 3 mana, don't dagger up.
Yeah, if I could not use that Divine Favor, he would be drawing very slow right now. He just would have seen Champion's Ball. He would be seeing Baku the turn after that, and then seeing Blessing of Mine. I know you can't look at the game that way.
And he'd have extra minions on the board. He would have fit in 2
Yes.
more
Many
button presses because he wouldn't have made the double 1-drop play on turn 2.
And that, to me, is going to be the question. Is the access to resources worth more? Or was it the board presence? And right now, the Champion's Ball is going to make up some of that board presence he lost. And, extremely importantly so.
Yeah. Well, this is going to work out really well for Ike. I've been just trying to think through both these players' lines in this early game. And I know myself I would have done things differently on both accounts, but I can see the merit in each of them. Ike's is trying to go all in on Divine Favor early game to get his resources.
Stonehill is just, it was like almost perfect in this situation. The fact that it blocks both the dagger and this 3/8 are just such a massive difference in what we were looking at the turn before this. That Stonehill actually might have put Ike at an extremely decisive position. And I think there's a number of cards actually that would have accomplished that same thing, but the Stonehill just, it's such an innocuous card that's playing such a big role right here.
Yeah.
And I could have taken that opportunity to push.
Shellfire next to a Tar Creeper, though, is actually a pretty scary thing.
It is a scary thing, but the problem is he doesn't really have any way to fight for board left outside of just playing minions and hoping that's good enough, and Ike has loaded his hand with big buffs.
Well, Tar Creeper is his way to fight through board.
That's an issue.
Because you effectively have to get through 13 points of taunt to kill the Tar Creeper. Because the Snapjaw Shell Fighter is going to eat up at least the first 8 points of damage.
Make that 7.
Make that 7. And then the Tar Creeper will have to eat up another 5.
I get what you're saying, but this is a 6-minion raid leader that's landing.
Also, this is not a control deck. This is Odd Rogue, which wants to be doing the same thing that Odd Paladin's doing. So even once that Shell Fighter absorbs all that damage, who cares? Because he has no development beyond that, outside of a bunch of 5-drops that rely on you having minions on board to take advantage of.
Yeah.
Or in Vile Spine Slayer's case, cheap minions to play with it.
Thunder Up is never getting the board again. I think with that turn on the raid leader, 6 minions, that Ike has locked up the game. I would be shocked if Thunder Up won this game. That is exactly where I was going with it. And I could see your head starting to, the cog wheel starting to turn, and you're like, something's happening here, and I don't quite know what yet.
Reporting for duty.
Well, Firefly Vile Spine Slayer onto the raid leader.
Ugh.
And then
Yeah.
the 8/8 Frostwolf Warlord hits the board, and you're dead.
I think that's the play, though.
Maybe Ike leaves his minions on the board. He can set up a Fungomancer, make some good trades.
Yeah, you know, like maybe a Tsunami comes through, only hits Ike's side of the stage.
Maybe Ike's hand is double Vine Cleaver, Blessed Maul, Baku.
I think that might still win. I mean, the Vine Cleaver just sounds scary enough.
Yeah, that's a great point.
And one of the big factors too is that Ike's got freedom in that decision too. Does he want to push, or does he want to be, as I put it in the Hunter matchup, responsible?
Reporting for duty.
Just keep playing around Fungomancer. Don't let them land it.
No Phantom Knives in the deck. Ike knows that.
And without Cold Blood's able to be in the deck anymore, Myra's is way less scary.
Yep. What Myra will do here is maybe pick up a Tar Creeper, and if not, make Thunder Up die faster.
So Thunder Up wouldn't die immediately unless Ike had damage from hand. So I think that the out for Thunder Up, looking from his perspective, is to Myra's into basically all the damage that's left in the deck. Because after the Myra's, you get to Dagger Up and Deadly Poison. That represents 8 damage. And that means Ike has 13 health left, which would be Leroy,
Double Southsea.
Double Southsea, and wow, am I still having trouble piecing together the damage?
There's nothing else.
Oh, gosh, you're right.
Well, finds Leroy 1 Southsea in SI.
So Dagger Up and Deadly represents 8. The second Deadly makes that 10. You have Southsea Deckhand for 12, Leroy for 18, and then SI7 Agent for 19, 20.
Does he even have enough mana for that?
This guy's
Nope.
No Tar Creeper picked up. Takes the defensive line, which
Means Ike is going to secure the board with just the Anoia module, slam a Frostwolf Warlord, trade off on the board. Fatigue's going to set in, and Thunder Up's done for.
Reporting for duty.
no outs. Then I'm going to take a long look at this board and think I'm very, very dead.
I give up.
Ike, 3-2 over Thunder Up, and moves on to the winners match in his group. This was a tough-looking set, and it went back and forth. Ike takes first 2, Thunder Up answers back quickly. And I'll tell you what, when you're sitting in that tournament seat and the games are swinging back and forth like that, it feels a lot different than it is just kind of watching it and be like, oh, it's tied up now.
Yeah.
No, both players are extremely nervous in that spot, and typically the player who has lost the second 2 games has a much tougher mentality than the player who has just won 2 games. They're usually feeling pretty confident, but I think the matchup that Thunder Up had there, it just being such a poor one for Odd Rogue, it ends up being a big payoff for Ike and the Odd Paladin.
And I'm looking at the numbers, Kibler, and it's looking real bad for Lion King. We saw some one-sided matchups earlier. This might be our most one-sided matchup.
Yeah, we were talking earlier about how Viper's matchup earlier today against Noblord was very one-sided. This could be even more one-sided than that. Bunny Hopper's decks are extremely aggressive, and Lion King has very anti-combo, anti-control decks, which will not serve him well in this matchup.
That's right. We have Mid-Range Hunter, Miracle Rogue, Odd Secret Mage, and even Paladin for Bunny Hopper. That's Dr. Bunny Hopper to you guys, who, for people who haven't heard, he has finished his PhD recently, is now focused on Heartstone competing mainly, and seeing where it goes from there. And then Lion King, he's playing Clone Priest, Quest Rogue, even Warlock, and Death Rattle Hunter. Of course, the Death Rattle Hunter is banned because that is one of the better decks against the aggressive strategies, at least from Lion King's perspective.
And it's worth noting, too, that Lion King is playing even more biased versions of these decks against other control and combo decks. For instance, his version of the Cloning Gallery Priest has Vivid Nightmare and only a single copy of Eternal Servitude, which is the sort of thing where, okay, well, maybe at least I can get an early Velen and then res it. And, well, he's not going to be doing that as often as other versions can. Similarly, his Even Warlock has Mojo Master and Nerubian Unraveler. Those are terrible cards to draw against an aggressive opponent.
Yep. So this one looks pretty bad. It's about a 70% favorite, like Bunny Hopper mentioned. And we'll see if Quest Row can even get a win, let alone if Lion King can take this series. We actually cast the first match of today, and it was very similar, where Noblord was queuing up Quest Rogue repeatedly, just couldn't get over the hump. Way too much aggression coming out from Viper. And it doesn't surprise me that Bunny Hopper and Viper come with similar strategies, both the only players to bring Odd Secret Mage, and generally have the same alignment to be aggressive.
Yeah, they interestingly had very similar lineups at the championship they previously attended. I believe for that event they actually practiced together. This event they did not, to my knowledge, and they still came to very similar conclusions due to having, I assume, similar influence among people who they talk to and practice with.
Yeah, I'm sure that makes a lot of sense. Even Paladin versus Quest Rogue. This is kind of in the middle of the road in terms of the matchup spread for Quest Rogue. Like, it has worse matchups like the Odd Secret Mage, but it has better matchups than this one too. Well, it all kind of depends on Bunny Hopper's start, because even Paladin is really powerful if you don't remove their early game minions, and Quest Rogue takes a long time to get set up.
Though one of the cards that can get you set up much faster is Sonya Shadow Dancer, and that is the first draw for Lion King. So he doesn't have a charger to go with it, like a deckhand or a boar, but it is one of the key elements to his deck being able to actually start going fast enough to deal with a deck like even Paladin.
For Bunny Hopper, his power spike looks to be his 4-mana cards. He has Corpse Taker and the Glass Knight, both minions that are very difficult to remove and have a lot of power to keep punching repeatedly. Wonder what Bunny Hopper is really thinking. Oh wait, no, it's just him.
It's
People
Bunny
who are
Hopper.
not familiar.
This is Bunny Hopper.
Bunny Hopper is notorious for winning a lot, but also being extremely meticulous about utilizing his turn.
I actually just had the realization that we're going to be sitting down for a Bunny Hopper match, and I didn't get any caffeine beforehand, so I may need some help from backstage if anyone can fetch me some energy. But Bunny Hopper here, he does obviously get his Recruit Dagger down. He has the Pyromancer, which is not something you necessarily are looking to tempo out or anything, especially if you're looking to coin out a Corpse Taker the following turn.
Right.
But his other option is the Argent Protector, which is no tremendous turn 2 play either.
Yeah, taking a look at Bunny Hopper's deck list, he does have one copy of Equality. We've seen some even Paladins put Equality in and out ever since its nerf to 4 mana. It has been a pretty big detriment to its board clearing abilities, but not the biggest of deals. They end up, putting a little bit more tech in, or perhaps just a little bit more early game, like an extra 2-drop or so.
Does decide it is the Pyromancer he'd like to play. This could indicate that he's not really looking to use coin next turn if this goes uncontested, because he can just give it Divine Shield with his Argent Protector and develop an additional 1/1 from his hero power.
Yep. Lion King picks up his second Glacial Shard, so that becomes a likelier candidate for him to want to use the bounce effects or Sonya, except they don't have the charge ability, so you need a turn to get set up. Doesn't feel that reliable, but, Zola helps add to that case. If you're able to Glacial Shard Zola next turn, and then set up Shadow Dancer, get both of them back.
And this dagger attack is actually somewhat important, because Bunny Hopper does have the coin. If he did coin out a Corpse Taker here, which would eliminate Lion King's board, that would leave him with a Pyromancer if Lion King didn't have the dagger attack in. So definitely a heads-up play from the Chinese player.
Yeah, I mean, in the end, it's not the biggest of deals. Pyromancer already did 3 damage anyways, because the rogue attacked into it. It's just so that it doesn't become problematic for a coin Blessing of Kings. I think that'd be like the ultimate punish. But coin Corpse Taker here still looks very good to me. So if you're Lion King here, if you have the Glacial Shard and the Zola, that's 3 that you have guaranteed. If you're able to trade both of them with Sonya Shadow Dancer, that's 5. So that it would be Lion King's quest completion if he's able to pull this off. But Bunny Hopper has that consecration ready. So I think that would be wishful thinking, to say the least. However, it's a bad matchup. Maybe Lion King has to take that risk.
All right, well, it will be another Glacial Shard coming down, and that is 2 on the quest. Going to look to complete there. And Glacial Shard is a good minion to be trying to complete on in this matchup, because your opponent is playing a deck that plays these mid-sized minions and buff cards, so the freeze effect and getting repeated use out of it is quite powerful. The One of the interesting things here is Bunny Hopper has that Consecration, which he kept in his opening hand. That's actually something you don't often see. Consecration is usually thought to be a card which is particularly powerful against, say, a deck like Zoo. But it is a recognition of this kind of game state coming up where, okay, I need to keep you off of being able to have minions that you can potentially get Sonya down to get additional plays from. Also, if anyone is worried about me, production did bring me some caffeine.
Yes, that's right. We can all rejoice in peace. The Consecration still looks pretty important to shut down that possibility of Zonya. But if Bunny Hopper chooses to play the Glass Knight, Lion King is going to go for a pretty big punish here. And that might already be the tides turning in this series. Now, the thing is, if Bunny Hopper did go for the Consecration, wow, what a draw.
That's actually a really big deal because it allows Lion King to kill this Corpse Taker, get additional copies from his minions, and reset the Sonya.
Right, Shadow Step to
He
Sonya.
can dagger here, Sonya attack both, attack both in, or rather dagger attack. It doesn't really matter the order, and then Shadow Step the Sonya. He doesn't have chargers though. He doesn't have rushers, so he has no way to really take advantage of the Sonya like you can with South Sea Deckhand. But it's still a very powerful situation that sets him up for future turns. And he's already at 3, I believe. This is the third. This is the third shard in his hand, and it will give him the fuel to reset. He may not even need to Shadow Step, is the thing. He may actually want to save the Shadow Step to reset with something else, because this Sonya, without, he already has the tools to reset, right? So it's possible that it's not worth using the Shadow Step here on the Sonya, because he would have to, in order for the Sonya to be powerful. Yeah, I kind of like this. As long as he does use the Shadow Step, yes, on something. This does leave him in a somewhat weird position if he does get Consecration, because he didn't actually clear off the Corpse Taker. But he does still have the completion of the quest from that Bounce Glacial Shard.
Well, Bunny Hopper got punished by that scenario, and to his credit, it was like the only card that could really punish him is the Sonya Shadow Dancer, versus him wanting to develop is a much more proactive plan that generally fares better against the plays that Lion King would have on average. So it's not like Lion King has the Sonya every single game, so more often than not, he can make that play. But, if he has the hard read that he has a Sonya Shadow Dancer, obviously he wants to eliminate that possibility. Now, the quest is completed next turn.
Yes.
This is very problematic for Bunny Hopper. However, Lion King needs a little bit more resources because he will get outvalued.
It is also crucially completed on this. The glacial shards have been such a huge deal in keeping Bunny Hopper sort of contained. Otherwise, this Corpse Taker's been in play for several turns now.
Right.
And there's a King's in hand. If that had been frozen multiple times, it's just been a lot of damage to Lion King's face. And now look at this. We're seeing that Wax Elemental come down, and Zola on the Wax Elemental. It looks like.
Yeah.
That is just so much that Bunny Hopper needs to fight through.
Such a perfect specimen.
So Bunny Hopper now has a couple of choices, but the Spiker Steed is the first thing that I gravitated towards because you had the Divine Shield on the Glass Knight. Your opponent is holding one card with the Wax Elemental number 2 that from the Zola was created. And I think the number one thing that you're concerned about ultimately is what if my opponent has like some kind of vanish to deal with the Spiker Steed, but it's like your opponent loses a little bit of ground too. I guess they do create a little bit of resources in the process, so it wouldn't be the biggest of deals. Other than that, do you see any other play that you'd like besides the Spiker Steed?
I mean, I don't really like any play here. I mean, Spiker Steed is fine. It at least helps mitigate some amount of damage that you'd be taking, but it's not actually making inroads in your opponent's board. I mean, I think that frankly, Bunny Hopper's just in a terrible position here.
Yeah. All right, well, Lion picked up another Wax Elemental.
Yeah, big Waxy, left and right.
Big Waxy. 2-star Waxy. I think Lion King has the Ziliax also, but this is a lot to chew through stats-wise. Giving up a lot.
Yeah. You are, but you every single minion you draw is a 4/4, and your opponent has nothing on board.
True. For now. I mean, I'm thinking that if Lion King doesn't pick up more resource generation,
It is theoretically possible that Bunny Hopper, gets to, say kings this, kill the Ziliax, but then he just loses his minion to the Divine Shield of the Wax Elemental.
Well, it could pick up the auto defense matrix, or he can Divine Shield beforehand.
Sure.
To keep it as a 6/6.
Let me think.
Yeah, that is true. If he does play the Blessed of Kings plus the Argent Protector, that's that guy. He can kill it, not give any life to Lion King as well, which is fairly crucial because he does need to actually end the game before Lion King finds an Elven Minstrel in particular. Which is, of course, the main reason that Lion King kept that Wax Elemental in his hand. He wants to ensure that he does retain combo if he does pick up an Elven Minstrel to reload.
Reporting for duty.
That stings. Lion King would have loved to have that extra life.
All right, Novice
is
Engineer,
good.
that's a great draw. And
That's a
Vicious
good draw,
Scale High,
too.
that's some extra life. And now Lion King actually has the full clear. Can use the Scale Hide and the Dagger to take down both of Bunny Hopper's remaining minions if he chooses.
Yeah. Tyrion comes down this turn from Bunny Hopper, and that requires 2 minions to answer it. The big thing is that Lion King's getting back life with that Vicious Scale Hide.
Right. And now Lion King back to 22. And the window that Bunny Hopper has to try and out-resource him is definitely closing. Tyrion here is at least reasonably powerful, because if it does die, he still gets the weapon, and he potentially try and reload behind that if Lion King, for instance, draws Preparation this turn. That may be a window that Bunny Hopper has to get back into the game.
Sure.
But that window is very small because Lion King has lots of draws that really just put things away.
He does, but as the game progresses, Bunny Hopper has a way to answer a big wide board too. So if Lion King gets kind of reckless, he could be walking into an equality scenario. Mimic Pod is good.
Mimic Pod is a serious card for Lion King. You see it. Preparation, though. We were talking about how that is air. That is Mimic Pod into double air. So that is exactly what Bunny Hopper needed, was for Lion King to brick this turn. He needed him to hit nothing of value this turn, and that's exactly what happened.
Ouch.
And he's going to have a pretty strong read on what that card is when Lion King doesn't play it this turn.
Oh, man. You got to feel bad for Lion King based off that. That was like the one card he didn't need, and that was the one you were calling out. You're like, yes, I guess if he draws Preparation.
I mean, this is still not a disaster situation just yet, because there is that Wax Elemental that he'd been previously holding for combo. Obviously, these preparations, that's what they're good for, is enabling combo.
All right, well, back to the drawing board, I suppose.
I mean, Bunny Hopper can Consecration here to clear off the shield, play a Chain Gang and Hero Power, kill the Wax Elemental with the weapon. That at least gives, gets rid of the Divine Shielded minion, gets a minion, 2 minions on board, so he has a likely target to attack with the Blessing of Kings the following turn. Different direction, though. Decides to Hydrologist.
Yeah, it could be Bunny Hopper looking for a specific secret to help him out in this scenario. Auto Defense Matrix works really well with Serenite Chain Gang. Hidden Wisdom, interesting. So Bunny Hopper says, you know what, my hand doesn't look very good. Maybe I need to trick my opponent into playing multiple cards per turn, and then I can use Hidden Wisdom in order to draw and keep up my resources. And in the meantime, Lion King is going to treat this as if it is Auto Defense Matrix or Noble Sacrifice. And he's going to be very cautious with how he attacks.
Reporting for duty.
Lab Recruiter. Well, that's not bad. It's at least a minion, and he can get additional copies of Novice Engineer, which obviously is a fantastic card for him to draw at any point because it represents additional resources and board presence.
Man, what is the play long-term for Lion King here? I mean, what is he even shuffling to his deck? Is he shuffling Novice Engineer? Is he shuffling a Wax Elemental?
I think it's got to be.
Recruiter?
I think it's got to be Novice, because if he just draws Wax Elementals, he theoretically loses. If he just draws a Wax Elemental every turn, he's not actually generating very much compared to Bunny Hopper's weapon and hero power. He's actually falling behind.
That makes sense.
At least in the near future. So I would expect that if he Lab Recruiters this turn, and I think he needs to just for board presence, that it would be on the Novice Engineer.
Yeah, that makes sense. Novice Engineer has the ability to keep chain to itself. Attacks first for the Auto Defense Matrix and No Sacrifice.
And interestingly, that does just get 2 damage in. You know, the fact that Bunny Hopper played a secret here actually mattered quite a bit in terms of simply generating.
It's as if it is a No Sacrifice.
Right.
He got 2 secrets in 1.
And now, you know, I think from Bunny Hopper's perspective, he's got to be able to identify that card in hand as preparation. Ooh, Valenier. That's not the best of draws given the circumstances, considering he has the Ashspring already.
Right, that's true. But this turn, he doesn't have to play the Valenier. He has the Consecration and the Blessing Kings and the Avenging Wrath as options at this point. If you Consecration first, Avenging Wrath has a pretty decent chance of just clearing the board based off of your combination of your weapon, your minion attack, and everything else, and then you can push damage.
I mean, there's the option he could Consecration Blessing of Kings, and swing into one of these with, you know, trade his 2/2 and, you know, send the 5/5 to face, or just not worry about killing everything. Just attack through with the 2/2, Blessing of Kings your 5/5, send 9 to face, put Lion King down to 7 when you have Avenging Wrath in hand.
I like that.
Yeah, that's the play I like right now.
I like the sound of that.
So this is just getting a lot of damage into face. You still have this weapon, you still have this Avenging Wrath. That puts Lion King basically on having to find something really good this turn.
Yep, Vanish isn't good enough.
Shadow Step is not either. I think that's just it.
Yeah, I don't think there's anything Lion King can do about this. He's staring at lethal on board, doesn't have the cards to do it, and he just continually kept whiffing. Quest Rogue looked like it had an opportunity to do it.
And Bunny Hopper, he's always a very stoic player. We saw him let out, like, it looked like a sigh of relief right there, because that was a game that looked like it was very much going against him. There was a very fast quest completion from Lion King, and Bunny Hopper, you know, didn't have the best draw, but the one-turn brick into kind of a 2-turn brick from Lion King there when it was the Mimic Pod into preparation, then the Lab Recruiter when he really needed something powerful just was not enough.
Yeah, Quest Rogue struggled to say the least, and that's why you don't give up until the game is 100% over. So that's going to be the first game in the books here, as Lion King will have to go back to the drawing board, but that was definitely a heartbreaker if you're a Lion King fan. So we're just getting started here with this best of 5 with game number 1. Don't go anywhere. More action, continuality. We all look at the numbers. We all go by our experiences and anecdotes, but only the results can speak for themselves in terms of who is going to advance today. Lion King, I feel for him. I feel like that was his breakthrough moment, and now that he lost game 1, it almost feels like he's down 0-2 already.
It does, because that game must have felt like it was within his grasp.
Yeah.
He knew he had a really difficult matchup coming in, and once he got that quest online so quickly, he still had a lot of life left to work with. You know, you've got to be feeling, all right, I've got this. You know, I'm going to win. And then to have everything fall apart toward the end there must be pretty crushing for him.
Yeah, no doubt.
But Lion King is a player who is very much known for his determination, his persistence. He was a player who I believe made 6 Gold Series final performances. I'm not really sure exactly.
Yeah, top stage.
Yeah, final stage. He made the final stage of Gold Series, I think, 6 times as an uninvited player. He had to play through the open bracket so many times, and now he has made multiple championship appearances, you know, after that run. And you know, he is certainly not one who gives up at any opposition.
Yeah, a lot of the players have kind of come and gone over the years. Lion King's a player that kind of kept proving himself through consistency. You know, it reminds me a lot of what Muzzy had to do for a few years leading up to 2017 when he eventually made his first World Championship appearance. People were just like, yeah, I know Muzzy's a really good player, top ladder finisher, but how come we don't really see him that much? It's because he wasn't really getting invited to a lot of those tournaments. He was proving himself grinding all those open cups and ladders, and now there's no one that questions whenever he gets invited to a tournament. Same is kind of being said about Lion King, but over in China.
Yeah, and now this was another pretty tough matchup. He's got his even Warlock up against the mid-range Hunter for Bunny Hopper. We haven't seen mid-range Hunter much in this tournament so far, but that's because it has very frequently been banned.
Right.
And Lion King, however, is allowing Bunny Hopper to play this in this matchup.
Yeah, rightfully so, too, because mid-range Hunter is a very flexible deck. It has it all. You know, part of what made mid-range Hunter so good in the past was because it had Starving Buzzard and Unleash the Hounds for card draw. It had a lot of huge burst with Kill Command and Leroy. It had great early game curve. It had good late game opportunity. And that's very much the same of how it is now. It doesn't need Emerald Spellstone in order to have that powerful mid-game punch, because it still can rely on good solid curves through Dire Maul, Crackling Razor Maw, Animal Companion, and then have top end with Tundra Rhino and a bunch of Scavenging Hyenas for maximum burst.
And Master's Call is really just the glue that holds it all together, because it lets you play that much early game and not really just worry in the mid game, oh, well, I just drew all my early game and I ran out of stuff. With Master's Call, you know, you end up either, well, you do your early game early, okay, well, you know, now you just get your mid game and late game out of your deck. Oh, I drew, you know, all of my late game, okay, well, I can at least gut my deck of all of these expensive cards, rather than the low cheap cards with a single draw.
All right.
SM Orc.
He's got the blessing. He's got the Huffer on turn 2, and that was a decision that took a while. I was kind of thinking Crackling Razor Maul was a foregone conclusion. Bunny Hopper, what is he really trying to accomplish? Is it just because he wanted that Huffer? He wanted that pressure this fast?
Well, I think that any of the Animal Companions is pretty good pressure there. And then a Crackling Razor Maw on a larger minion is just much more powerful. If he Crackling Razor Maws this Dire Maul, say he gets a weak set of options, it's not really that exciting.
Sure.
Whereas, you know, say he hits Misha. Okay, well now, you know, any plus health gets a 4/4 out of range of Spellstone.
Right.
You know, any Wind Fury, obviously much more powerful in those. So the adapt power is magnified on larger minions. So I think that was a lot of the thought process going into that for Bunny there.
I like it. And it ends up paying off pretty handsomely. Now look at Lion King's act of desperation, playing a Sun Fury Protector. And that is...
got me a 2/3.
I mean, that's perfect for Bunny Hopper of how he wants to deal with it. He has the Spring Paw and the Candle Shot. He has the Crackling Razor Maul and any combination of one source of damage.
This is an interesting spot, actually, because if he does decide to use the Razor Maw here, you know, he runs the risk of missing. You know, if he does say he Razor Maws the Dire Maul and gets all defensive options, nothing that actually gives poisonous or any kind of plus attack, then he's not necessarily in a great spot.
Right, and almost anything he does walks into Hellfire. Even this is +3 health.
+3 attack. Get him!
I like it.
He's got to be a little worried if he does +3 attack here, because that is 7 damage, and that does put your opponent immediately into range to play a Hooked Reaver, and you don't have a way to deal with Hooked Reaver right now. That said, you're certainly not +3 attacking and then trading. Or not attacking phase, because your opponent's just going to trade. So it's just a matter of what are we going to see. All right, well, this is the philosophy of, well, you make them have it.
Yeah, and even if he had it, it's not like you're completely hopeless. You still have Master's Call and Flanking Strike to back it up on the following turn. Whew, this Hellfire hurts a lot. So you might end up just using the Spellstone as just just as it is right now.
Yeah, I think he's going to go for Hellfire here, because he wants to upgrade the Spellstone. He wants to have Spellstone for 5 to something, you know, the next thing that comes down.
Yeah, that's true. It hurts so bad. You're down single digits. And now Bunny Hopper has the ability to either redevelop minions or go for that Master's Call. One thing that is interesting is I actually looked up the card data for Master's Call, and one of its highest win rates is actually just played straight up on curve.
Yeah.
When you play Mid-Range Hunter, you actually anticipate it wanting to curve out with minions, but you know, in a lot of matchups, Mid-Range Hunter is about exploding its mid-game.
Yes, and one of the things that's important about Mid-Range Hunter is it's actually a deck that's very synergy-driven things like the Spring Paw and the Hyena and the Crackling Razor Maw and Tundra Rhino, all of these pieces fit together, and they're so much better when you draw them all. And Master's Call helps you fit all those pieces together and actually manifest your synergies rather than just kind of hoping that they come out at some point.
Yeah, I was very surprised at how much of a significant win rate. Because then after that, it drops off a little bit because I think you're coming up on your power turn. So turns 5, 6, 7, you want to hit like, you know, your high mains. You want to hit like the big flanking strike swing turns. And then again in the late game, Master Call's win percentage spikes up again because you fill up your mana curve. So it's just one of those things where, you know, don't be afraid to pull a trigger on Master's Call to get that value if the situation calls for it.
But do be afraid of a Hyena on the opposing side because that thing you got a hand, and Lion King, you know, wastes no time, snaps off the Spellstone to keep himself afloat.
Yeah, in this position, Bunny Hopper has two choices: the Master Call or the tracking. Master's Call ends up working sometimes against tracking. Like, tracking can pick up the beast that you want to pull anyways. So this could be one of the situations where Bunny Hopper wants to draw with Master's Call first, even though tracking might be more efficient for his tempo, because he could develop stronger minions with 4 mana as opposed to 2. That being said, he drew the high main. That is a nice draw from Bunny Hopper.
Yeah, the high main gives him an excellent power play next turn, and even just you know, another Hyena here. You know, a lot of players will hold their Hyena until they can get trades, and like, okay, I want to, you know, ensure my opponent can't easily kill it. Just make him have it, and that's what Bunny Hopper has done every turn so far here. And we see the Defile draw that may look good, but it's important to note that Hyena has text, and when that Defile goes off, that Hyena is going to eat the bones of those poor remaining little beasts there and get out of range of the additional tick. So that's the way to get yourself dead.
Yeah, I have made lots of mistakes playing Scavenging
Hyena. Hyena is just such an incredibly powerful card in the current Hunter decks, and that is driven almost entirely by the strength of Spring Paw. And not only the strength of Spring Paw, but the strength of Spring Paw alongside Master's Call, ensuring you have so much access to it that you just can totally run away with games, but with a huge Hyena very early on. And also just, obviously, opponents not quite realizing. They just look at a board. Oh, 1-2, great. I'll Defile it. Oh, I'm dead.
Yeah, this is rough.
Yeah, and here, you know, Lion King's like, okay, well, I have to do something to, you know, protect myself. But playing to the board when the Hyena in play and other... Oh, my God. Is that just going to be lethal? It might be.
Yeah. Hold on. So Timberwolf plus this right now is 5 plus 3, so 8, 10.
And then plus 4 more.
Plus 4.
Oh, it's all. Oh no, it is lethal, right?
Yeah, because you hero power.
The Timberwolf plus the Spring Paw Lynx that's plus another 4 from there. So it's, the board gets 4, 3, 4, right? Is that right?
Yeah.
No,
so it's 13,
which is just off, right?
Yeah.
No, you 4, 3, 4, then hero power. Is that
no? 4, 3, 4 is
4 plus
11.
3 plus another 4. Right, 11. Or right, 13. Yeah.
Yeah.
So it is just shy of lethal. So
well, could he get another tracking for lethal?
He runs out of mana. He has no other.
Yeah.
He could tracking and get another Timberwolf.
Oh, okay, yeah.
If he trackings here and gets the second Timberwolf, that is just lethal.
There's 14 cards remaining.
Oh no, it's not. There's not enough mana. Never mind.
Right, because he can't hero power at that point.
But this is still, you know, okay. Well, I'll clear off, you know, your board, and do, you know, just shy of lethal damage to you. 11 to the face, plus 2 more from the steady shot.
Very
All right,
close.
good luck.
Even Warlock looks like it's toasty toast here. Nothing to do.
Life tap. That's all you can do is say, all right, well, I'm dead, but you didn't get the killing blow, and now Bunny Hopper, 2-0 lead over Lion King. Really, really dominant performance so far.
Yeah, but I mean, this is kind of the expected result that we were anticipating, largely because, you know, Bunny Hopper said it in his piece. He knows Lion King likes to play anti-control. He likes to be greedy, likes to punish them with really powerful mid-range or combo decks. And that's not what Bunny Hopper brought. He brought this aggressive strategy and shows his flexibility as a player. Because, you know, last time in the Winter Championship, he was bringing a control lineup. You know, that big spell mage and the Shutterwalk mirror that lasted for like 5 hours against Viper.
Yeah, Bunny Hopper had a lot of anti-control style decks in his previous appearance that, you know, would go up against potentially a greedier lineup and maybe run into some trouble. But here, Lion King's the one who's going greedy, and Bunny Hopper's like, all right, well, I'm just gonna beat you up.
Yeah, the good old beat 'em up strategy is still very good in Hearthstone, even though everyone has felt like aggro has lost a step or two. It's still very strong and very robust.
It's always when people think aggro is dead that aggro is on the verge of a resurgence. It is when people stop playing decks to beat stuff like Scavenger Hyena or the raiding party into Shadowblade into Dread Corsair that you just hit them in the face and they're dead.
Yeah, exactly. Well, so the last deck remaining here from Bunny Hopper still going to be very strong up against all of what Lion King does. I'm not really sure exactly what Lion King is choosing to do because he's switching decks too, and that's something that you kind of have your pick of the litter, but almost all the decks that he's going to go up against, he can struggle.
Yeah, I mean he has to take